Alright, you and I are about to see what happens when Xenon Academy's first years realize today's lesson with Professor JRO isn't normal. He brings out a rare crystal orb to sniff out any monsters hiding in plain sight. Argon steps up first, clocking a quality of 4 and quantity of 17. That is already crushing last year's average. Then Furion raises the stakes, hitting quality 6 and quantity 20. The entire room just collectively gasps. But then the sleepy kid, Damien, finally wakes up and touches the orb. He shatters their pride with a quality of 9 and a massive 67 for quantity. Now, everyone is staring at Asta. He tries to stay low, but the system flashes 10 before erroring out because he's over the limit. Asta forces a reset, faking a harmless 3 for quality and 15 for quantity. Now, there is a very good reason why our main character is hiding his real power. Rewind a bit. Asta was once a troubleshooter mage for the Declan House, but he ended up stealing a legendary tome. Assassins hunt him down, but he wipes them out, keeping one alive just to torture some information out of him. Asta pins the hunter with his magic, demanding to know how to use the tome, but the guy has 0 clues. Asta realizes the head of the house probably has no idea what this book is worth, otherwise he wouldn't leave it in a basement. Even so, they still hunted him down for that book. Even though Faren doesn't know how to use it, the hunter suggests Asta hand over the tome so he can help him beg for a shred of mercy. Asta isn't buying the offer. He tells the hunter straight up that his time is officially over. Now watch this part. A portal tears open behind him, and an absolutely terrifying aura starts pouring out. The aura is coming from a cool guy holding a cane. It turns out he's Faren Declan, the legendary head of the entire Declan House. Faren calmly asks for the tome back. After that, they can have a little chat. Asta is completely crushed by the overwhelming power standing right in front of him. He has been a professional troubleshooter for over 10 years, and spent half of that time serving the Declan House, but this is his first time seeing the leader. The Declan House is the top magic family in the East, and rumors say Faren is the strongest mage in their history. Asta can feel the danger radiating off the man, but he decides to play it cool. He asks Faren if he is really shameless enough to come here just to steal someone else's loot. Faren just laughs, but Asta is sweating. He knows having the big boss show up personally means real trouble. He has to admit it. Faren has the most oppressive, overwhelming aura he has ever encountered in his life. Faren mentions he could just kill him and take the tome, but he would rather have a conversation first. Faren tells Asta he wants him to return to work for the Declan House. He promises to forget every single one of his sins if he comes home and hands over that tome. You and I can see the potential, and so can Faren. He doesn't want that talent going to waste. He is impressed that a kid from the Gray Zone mastered such effective, high-level techniques all on his own. He starts sweet-talking him, promising that Asta could truly reach the top with the Declan House backing him up. After listing all the perks, Faren drops the most important one. He absolutely needs that legendary tome handed back right now. Asta tells him he's on board with the terms, making Faren breathe a massive sigh of relief. But wait, there is a catch. Asta is about to make the most ruthless demand you can imagine. He tells Faren to hand over the entire house leadership, and maybe he'll think about returning the book. To prove he's serious, Asta executes the hostage right there. Faren is absolutely livid, warning the boy that this dangerous path he's chosen will only lead to an early grave. Asta knows he's probably right about that, but he lunges forward anyway, just to see how big the power gap really is. Faren easily blocks the blue strike with a red shield. Faren realizes he needs to teach this kid a lesson, so he understands they aren't even in the same league. While looking completely unfazed, Faren unleashes a magic blast that sends Asta flying backwards through the air. Asta barely escapes being roasted alive. It is finally sinking in just how monstrous the head of the house is. He can't find a single opening to strike. The second Asta gets lost in thought, Faren slams him with another powerful magic blast. Faren tells him there is no point in measuring strength when they are worlds apart from each other. Suddenly, Asta is staring down a massive magic attack that he has no hope of dodging. He gets absolutely wrecked, but Faren lets him know he held back on purpose. He is not ready to kill the boy just yet because he still wants to talk. Asta finally asks what would actually happen if he decided to return to the Declan House. Faren admits he wouldn't believe him anyway. You and I both know where this is going. Asta just starts cooking up another deadly magic attack to end this. Alright, you and I are about to see what happens when a dog finally bites back. Asta pours every drop of mana into a magic attack that glows as bright as lightning. He lunges at Faren, screaming that he won't go back to the kennel, but even his strongest magic fails to break through that absolute defense. Faren just scoffs, finally ready to show him what true power really looks like. A powerful blast strikes Asta, sending his mind racing through the past until he wakes up under Faren's heavy boot. Faren looks down, asking if he has finally understood the gap between them. Asta admits the guy is strong, but asks if he can just go back to being a troubleshooter again. Faren shakes his head, wanting Asta to be much more than a simple mercenary. He offers Asta the position of Bongshin family head, leaving the warrior completely shocked by the offer. Since House Declan is powerful enough to even challenge the throne, Asta figures out they want him as head of the Bunction family just to swear fealty as a vassal. Finally, he understands what Faren's true goal actually is. He reaches into his storage space and pulls out the legendary tome. Watch this closely, because Faren thinks he has finally won both the man and the tome. But just as Faren reaches out, Asta sets the book ablaze, leaving him paralyzed with shock. Faren demands to know what he is doing, but Asta never intended to give him a thing, even under the threat of death. Asta reveals that he never became a troubleshooter just for the money. He is actually furious that his teammate was eaten by Declan's young master using forbidden magic. Declan covered up the crime, and now Faren realizes Asta is coming after them for pure revenge. Asta corrects him, saying he only wants justice for his fallen teammates. He considers this whole run as his retirement, and these as his final words. Furious, Faren sets him on fire, telling Asta to burn and regret his pathetic choices. Asta just screams through the flames, telling him he has zero regrets. He was ready to die to avoid working for House Declan ever again. As the fire consumes him, he views it as freedom and swears to get revenge if he is ever reborn. Suddenly, time stops, and the burning tome begins to glow strangely in his hands. Magic circles cover his body, and that is the last thing he sees before passing out. When he wakes up, Asta finds himself in a pile of trash, dressed as a beggar. You and I both see it. He has returned to his childhood in the gray zone. He runs to a lake, and the reflection confirms he is back in his younger body. Even in the past, the fire mark on his chest remains. He is sure the tome magic is what pulled him back in time. If the head of the house chased him for it, that book must be incredibly important. With a second chance, Asta believes he can finally succeed in what he wanted to accomplish. He thinks about his primary mission and objective, a goal he once shared with his fallen comrade in the lower class. His friend always said their lives would be better with an education. They would not be slaves to the rich. So Asta planned to build a library. He wants a library where anyone can read for free, regardless of status. In fact, he wants to take things up a notch by building a massive tower. He does not really need a tower, he just wants to build it for the fun of it. He plans to put House Declan's secret techniques on the very first page for the poor to find. He is already imagining the pure chaos. But the only problem is how he will get the manual. A sudden kick to the face interrupts his evil plan as a thug looms over him. The man keeps kicking, shouting that Asta should not have moved from his spot. Asta barely remembers this douchebag who used him as a punching bag, but trust me, he is done being trash. Alright. You and I are about to watch Asta promise to return 7 hits with 70 more. He swings a punch at the guy's chest, but his body is so weak his own wrist just snaps. Asta is stunned, but before he can even process the pain, a fist slams right into his face. The bully resumes the beating, unloading a brutal series of kicks. The pain is so intense, Asta is actually moved to tears. The beating continues until Asta spots a tiny opening, shoving the guy straight into the lake. Before the bully can even get back on his feet, Asta makes a break for it. The guy pulls himself out of the water, screaming about why he is running away. Asta just shouts back that this is a tactical retreat, not a flight. He makes sure to tell the guy he is never going to forget that face. He promises to remember every single hit he took. As a veteran troubleshooter, the word quit simply does not exist in his vocabulary. Revenge is coming. Now, pay attention, because as he stares at his broken wrist in an alley, everything changes. He cannot believe his own body is this weak, literally breaking just from throwing one punch. Asta decides to drop his dreams for now and focus entirely on training this trashy physique. Suddenly, a kid with a red eye appears, asking Asta if he is hungry. Surprised, Asta asks if the kid actually knows him, but the boy admits he has zero clue who he is. Asta figures he is some noble brat who lost everything in a power struggle. He looks way too fancy for this place. To Asta, this kid looks like a walking, pretty little time bomb. That is when the boy introduces himself as Damien. Asta is creeped out by this kid staring and talking nonsense, so he straight up asks if he is mentally stable. Damien mentions he has no mother, so Asta fires back by saying he doesn't have a father either. It has officially turned into a competition of who is the best orphan. Asta tells him they should split. There is no way he is getting tangled up with a ticking bomb like this kid. Moments later, Damien just stands there, staring. Totally creeped out, Asta asks him if he is ever going to leave or what. Damien shockingly announces that he is going with him. Asta seriously considers smacking the kid just to help him return to his senses. Instead, he just tells him to get lost. Suddenly, Damien reaches out and touches the wound on Asta's head. Damien assures him he can heal the wound. With a creepy smile, he casts a glowing magic circle that starts emitting healing particles everywhere. Asta thinks it is just a simple trick, but he is about to realize how wrong he is. This is not just magic. It is the light of healing, the legendary secret technique of House Blandor. You and I can see the panic on his face. He just accidentally stumbled into a very dangerous political nightmare. He starts wondering why a Blander kid is wandering inside the gray zone. He figures that at this current time, the Blander family should still be strong. While lost in his thoughts, Asta calls out Damien's name. The boy answers excitedly, revealing that his other eye is green. He literally has two different eye colors. Seeing those mismatched eyes triggers a terrifying memory that Asta had completely forgotten. This kid, with the mismatched eyes, was the one who later grew up to be the infamous monster of Blander, the mad butcher who refused to die in battle. After healing him, Damien just squats down to count ants like a normal kid, leaving Asta completely baffled. Back before the regression, when he was still a troubleshooter, back then, his team got orders from the Declan family to head to the Blander estate. Apparently, they needed help because a monster was loose on the grounds. They expected to fight an ogre or some giant beast. They were not prepared for the reality. But when they arrived at the estate, they found a truly gruesome scene. It was Damien tearing people apart like it was nothing, casting healing magic endlessly while laughing like a total madman. This was how he earned the name Monster of Blander, the butcher who refuses to die no matter what. Asta decides to shake off the memory and focus purely on the present. He simply cannot fathom why the direct descendant and sole heir to the prestigious Blander house is currently chilling in a dangerous dump like the Grey Zone. Suddenly, Damien breaks the silence with a very random suggestion. He wants to go eat. He says his mom taught him that health comes from food, and he figures Asta is weak, simply because he is starving. Looking at his own pathetic state, Asta has to admit the little guy actually has a point. Asta asks if he even has any cash, and Damien pulls out a pouch overflowing with pure gold coins. Asta's eyes practically turn into dollar signs as he immediately declares that they are now best friends. Trust me, you and I are about to see Asta pull the ultimate scheme by explaining to Damien that real friends share everything they have. Alright, you and I are about to dive into a story where a genius mage starts his path to absolute revenge. After clearing the plates, they head to a shelter. For the first time ever, Asta has a stomach full of real food. Damien is shocked to find a real house sitting right above their eating spot. He mentions sleeping outside and having no father. Asta tries to correct him, but the kid flat out refuses to acknowledge he has one. Asta asks if he has a mom, but the kid says she does not exist either. Basically, if they are not right there in front of him, they do not exist. Asta finally understands how deep this kid's trauma goes. Asta asks how long he has been on his own. Damien reveals that since running away, he has slept 10 times. Asta wonders if he is being hunted, considering the kid is keeping such a strict count of his sleep cycles. Asta assumes it has been 10 days, but then Damien mentions he takes naps sometimes even twice a day. However, even including all those naps, the grand total only adds up to 10. Asta calculates it has only been 3 or 4 days. Seeing the kid act so normal, he realizes even monsters were once innocent. Seeing Damien all alone, Asta decides to play nanny, hoping to build a solid connection with the powerful Blandor family. He knows this alliance will be his ace in the hole when he finally goes to war with the Declan family. Even with these big plans, Asta is still obsessing over the thug who hit him 57 times. Before heading to bed, Asta warns Damien not to wake him up because he has some serious business to handle. Damien is sharp though. He immediately guesses that Asta is about to practice his breathing techniques. In his past life, Asta's magic foundation was basic, so he had to sneak into noble estates just to steal spells. He nearly died back then, but he managed to snag powerful night techniques like the hardened body spell. He stole plenty of others, but it was only at death's door that he finally witnessed what true power looked like. Now, watch this carefully. This is the moment our main character truly changes his fate. This is a top-tier foundation art that allows a mage to harness every single attribute of mana. He once memorized the theory for research, and now he is finally putting the heavenly origin breathing technique into practice. The second he activates it, a massive surge of power hits him, feeling like liquid lava rushing through his veins. Even though the agony is nearly unbearable, Asta refuses to back down. Suddenly, he sees literal filth being burned out of his body. This noble-only art forces mana to incinerate every impurity. Asta completely loses himself in the process, eventually feeling like he is submerged in a pure pool of mana. When he finally opens his eyes after that grueling process, he sees that Damien has already fallen fast asleep. He is stunned to find that his mana circuits are now completely crystal clear, with 0 impurities remaining. Not only that, his mana is now even purer than in his past life. Even so, he knows taking down Declan is still nearly impossible. Still, his odds just went up. Asta tells himself he is a persistent fixer who never quits. Later, he helps Damien dye his hair brown and swaps his outfit for a common one to hide his noble identity. To finish the look, he gives the kid a cap to wear. Let's pause for a second. You and I both know that look in his eyes means trouble is coming. Asta eventually tracks down the guy who hit him 57 times. The thug just sneers, asking where he has been. Before the guy can talk any more trash, Asta buries a fist deep in his gut. The shock of pain knocks him out instantly. Asta is pretty proud of himself for landing such a perfect, precise strike. However, he is not even close to being done. He plans to hit this guy exactly 123 times. The rest of the household hears the noise and rushes out, only to see their youngest brother causing absolute mayhem. Asta is already picturing the chaos. He lets his rage explode, absolutely laying into the guys with zero mercy. He channels mana directly into his knuckles, making every single punch feel like a sledgehammer. Damien watches the carnage from behind, loving every second. He even starts healing the thugs just so Asta can keep pummeling them for a much longer time. The very first person he heals is the guy Asta has the biggest grudge against. The thug thinks the kid is helping him, until Asta grabs him and counts out the remaining hits. Once his fists get tired, Asta switches things up and starts using canes instead. And that's where we leave it, trust me. You're going to want to see the payback in the next chapter. Alright, you and I are about to see our main character take petty revenge to a whole new level. He makes Damien heal his victim just so he can beat him again. To the guy getting thrashed, these aren't kids, they're absolute demons. Once Asta finally gets his fill after a long day of training, he decides it's time to stop. To make it even worse, he actually thanks his victims. He basically used them as living punching bags and feels totally satisfied. He somehow landed over 100 hits on every single person, totaling well over 1,000. And yeah, he's proud of it. The leader politely asks if they can finally leave, and Asta just shrugs and says yes. The dude then reminds Asta that they're currently at his house, basically telling our main character to get lost. Asta catches the hint and stares him down with such a terrifying aura that the whole gang retreats into a corner. But then, Asta senses something. Someone is approaching, and their skill definitely giving off professional troubleshooter vibes. It hits him immediately. This newcomer might be coming specifically for Damien. Asta is shocked they tracked them down despite his caution. He knows they're in a tight spot, but he's not the type to just sit and wait for an attack. See, back in his past life, he was a legendary troubleshooter too. He's handled insane situations before, and this is no different. He pulls in every drop of mana, compressing it over and over. With that, he forms a lethal mana bullet and aims it straight at the person charging their way. Watch this part closely, things aren't always as they seem. He fires, but the guy pulls a slick knee, slide, dodges, and screams Damien's name. The man slides right to Damien's side. Turns out, he's the family's butler, a guy named Alfredo. He grabs the kid tight, but Damien wants no part of it. Alfredo insists he has to bring him home. Asta just stands in the background, watching this bizarre drama unfold right in front of him. The realization finally clicks. Damien actually ran away from home. Once the introductions are over, Alfredo invites Asta back to the estate since Damien clearly likes him. Asta takes a moment to think carefully about the offer. He knows they're a prestigious family, but their real motives? Still a complete mystery. Still, he was already looking to make some powerful connections. Plus, the family territory is right on his way to the city. Talk about perfect timing. Xenon Academy is nearby too, and since their library is world-class, Asta plans to scout it out for his own future collection. After thinking it over, Asta accepts. A few moments later, they've already arrived at the massive estate. As Asta steps off the carriage, he realizes this is his first formal visit. Since it's late, Alfredo suggests they get some sleep. He hands the kids over to the care of a maid named Lancency. She stares at Damien with ice-cold eyes, and the kid knows he's in trouble. Later that night, Alfredo heads to see the matron, Gamo. He reports that Damien was found in the gray zone and has been safely returned. Gamo is impulsive. She actually fires off a rage spell before she even hears that her son is perfectly fine. She breathes a sigh of relief. Alfredo does too. He knows anyone who hurt that boy would have faced a death sentence. You and I know her legend, Gamo, the Blood Witch, whose fury is absolutely unstoppable. She thanks Alfredo for his hard work. But before he leaves, he tells her there's one more thing she needs to know. He mentions that Damien's new friend, Asta, sensed him before he even showed his face. The kid was ready with a counterattack. Alfredo reveals that Asta was literally holding a mana bullet when they faced off. Gamo is impressed. She admits that for someone from the gray zone, that kind of talent is absolutely incredible. Because of that potential, Alfredo asks the matron for a special favor. Next morning, Asta wakes up to a wild request. Alfredo wants him to become his official successor. Asta is stunned. Alfredo is relieved to see him shocked, thinking the boy will obviously jump at such a rare and prestigious chance. But then, Alfredo's jaw drops. Asta flat out refuses the offer. The butler thinks he's gone deaf. Even Damien can't believe Asta actually turned it down. Asta admits it's a huge opportunity, but he tells Alfredo he prefers things just the way they are. Alfredo figures Asta is just a natural talent from the gray zone who's become way too full of himself. He tries to crush Asta's ego, warning him that the world is huge and he has no idea what monsters are out there. Alfredo compares him to a tiny goblin. But trust me, you and I are about to see this wyvern fly. Alfredo is completely stunned. Trust me, you and I are about to watch Asta absolutely dismantle a room full of elite trainees at the Butler house. Alfredo is proud to show Asta this grand spectacle, telling him these kids are the top talents of House Blandor. Asta watches the kids and admits they have undergone precise training that doesn't make them seem like normal kids at all. However, he is still totally unimpressed with what he is seeing. Asta says he can sense their aura, and Alfredo is actually glad to hear him say that. He asks one more time if Asta will accept the proposal and shine just like those trainees in front of him. Asta refuses again, claiming he hates the light then. A trainee named Winster finally raises his hand. Winster tells Alfredo that Asta is clearly talentless, and that's why he rejected the generous offer. He's convinced Asta can't grasp how great they are and wants to personally show him the truth. He is basically asking for a duel. Alfredo senses Winster's cockiness but allows the fight to happen anyway. He asks Asta if he's up for it. Asta gets it, the trainees already see him as their rival. They likely see him as some lucky guy who showed up and already has an offer to become the successor. Asta accepts the duel but asks Alfredo if he can choose his own opponents. Alfredo gives the green light. Asta points to Winster, then picks 4 other trainees to join in. Everyone is shocked when Asta reveals he wants a 5 versus 1 match. Winster is speechless, so Asta tells him he's free to back off if he's actually scared. Alfredo laughs at the audacity, realizing Asta has the exact kind of spark his successor should have. He asks Asta if he is truly ready to take responsibility for his words, and he says yes. Alfredo tells Asta that he will give him a gift if he lasts 1 minute in the duel, but if he fails, he'll have no choice but to become his successor. Asta can feel the desperation in Alfredo's voice, but he is not afraid of the challenge at all. Once they are in agreement, Alfredo tells everyone to step into the ring. The instructor is forced to ask Alfredo if this whole situation isn't getting a bit too dangerous. Alfredo admits it's risky, but he wants to humble Asta. Watch closely, because the instructor is terrified of hurting Damon's guest. He walks over to Damon and tells him his friend is in serious danger. The instructor wants Damon to stop the duel, but to his surprise, Damon is hyped for the fight. He even wants to join in, but Lance warns that GMA will scold him if he gets involved. The instructor realizes he has no choice since he's tried his best to stop the match. Lance notices the instructor's mood and leaves the room, telling Damon not to get involved. Damon smiles, promising the lady he won't. The instructor walks up to the kids to explain the rules. He tells them it's a free-for-all match that only ends when one side finally surrenders. However, he lets them know he can stop the duel whenever he wants. Winster stares at Asta with pure dislike, preparing to crush him and expose him as a fraud. Now pay attention here, the match starts, and Asta immediately lands a mana-imbued punch right in Winster's gut. Winster flies back, coughing up blood. Before he knows it, Asta has already wiped out the rest of the trainees. They are all rolling on the ground in severe pain, leaving Winster as the only one still standing. Asta stares at him like a villain, telling him he is prepared to give him an experience he'll never forget. He rolls mana bullets in his hands, telling Winster the first lesson is to never underestimate the little guy. Winster is already shaking when he realizes Asta is casually wielding mana bullets without even breaking a sweat. Winster knows how hard it is to conjure those. Asta continues, saying the second lesson is to stop judging people easily. Asta says this while hitting Winster and his comrades with a relentless hail of bullets. They all scream in agony from the intense pain. For the third lesson, Asta tells Winster the world is vast and bitter. Asta moves in close to Winster and finishes him off with one final punch. He smiles at the trainees, promising to personally teach them those lessons. Winster screams in pain, calling Asta a lunatic. He yells that Asta isn't using magic, but Asta argues that it definitely counts as magic. He continues his lesson by kicking Winster's head, telling him that this is what he calls physical magic. You and I just witnessed a total slaughter. Asta beats them like they're nothing, dragging them around like personal puppets. Alright, you and I are about to see Alfredo lose his mind over Asta's magic bullet. He's wondering just how many times that mana was compressed. Looking at that insane destructive power, Alfredo realizes those bullets were compressed at least 4 or 5 times. It suddenly hits him if he had actually taken those mana bullets head-on back then, he would have been in serious trouble. He realizes Asta has absolute, perfect control over his own innate mana. Plus, the kid is a natural at wrecking people. Meanwhile, Damien is in the back healing everyone up just so Asta can keep the beatdown going. Suddenly, Lance walks into the room alongside Gammo. She calls for Alfredo immediately. Once the instructor sees the matron, he lets out a huge sigh of relief, thinking they are finally safe. Gammo demands to know what is happening, and Alfredo admits he was just running a simple test. Gammo can't believe her eyes. This is a test? Asta is straight up demolishing the trainees while Damien backs him up from the rear. Gammo orders Alfredo to gather the trainees and tell them to pull back right away. She sends Damien and Asta back to their rooms. Then, she turns to the instructor and drops the hammer he's fired, leaving him completely stunned. Later that night, Gamo tells Alfredo that he crossed the line, even if his intentions were technically in the right place. Alfredo owns up to his mistake, telling Gamo he is ready to face whatever punishment she decides. Gamo asks if Damien helped Asta during the duel, but Alfredo says no. Apparently, Asta is just that good at breaking people. Alfredo explains that Asta used the magic bullet again, but this time, he compressed it several times to maximize the destructive force. Hearing this, Gamo realizes that Asta's mana control is far beyond what she expected. Now, pay attention here. Gamo watched Asta trash 5 trainees at once, like it was just another walk in the park. She knows mastering a magic bullet is incredibly difficult, even for top-tier mages. She asks about the successor offer, but Alfredo admits Asta rejected it instantly, without a second thought. Gamo realizes right then and there that she needs to completely reevaluate this kid. She orders Alfredo to bring Asta to her. When he arrives, Damien is already there, snacking on some cookies like the pampered brat he is. Before Gamo even says a word, she slides a mysterious box across the table toward Asta. Asta is caught off guard, but Gamo reminds him that Alfredo did promise him a reward. Asta is shocked that Gamo personally prepared the gift. He opens the box, and his eyes widen when he sees a very rare, high-grade item sitting right inside. Asta is stunned, knowing that even within the powerful Blander family, only the elites in the top 5 mage divisions ever get these. He immediately suspects there is some kind of catch hidden behind this gift, almost as if she can read his mind. Gamo tells him he is free to take the gift without any worries. She mentions he helped her son in the gray zone, and this is also her way of apologizing for the chaos earlier that day. Asta isn't falling for any traps just yet. He asks her straight up if using the item means he's forced to join the Blander family, but she says no. He even asks if the thing is poisoned, but she gives him the same answer. Asta is genuinely shocked that there are 0 strings attached to this thing. He gives his thanks and accepts the gift. Okay, here's the part we knew was coming. Gamo mentions she has a proposal. Asta realizes his suspicions were right on the money. Gamo reveals her plan to pull some strings and get Asta into the academy so he can attend alongside Damien. Asta is confused, so Gamo explains that Damien was supposed to go last year, but he flat out refused. That's why his enrollment was pushed back to this year. But honestly, Gamo never expected her son to actually run away the way he did. She can see that Damien clearly looks up to Asta, which is exactly why she is asking for this favor. Asta realizes Gamo is trying to ensure Damien stays in school, knowing he'll just bolt again if forced. Plus, Asta sees this as a massive, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for himself. Since the academy will open doors and provide him with powerful connections, he doesn't think it's a bad idea at all. He knows it is a solid plan, but he can't help feeling like they're trying to put a leash on him. He tells the lady that he will need some time to think about it. Gamo is fine with that and says she'll be waiting for his answer. Then, she curiously asks Asta why he turned down the chance to become Alfredo's official successor. Asta senses Alfredo is eavesdropping and decides to bruise his ego a bit. He simply tells her that his knees are way too precious. In other words, he doesn't bow to anyone. This total burn hits the butler right in the heart as he listens from behind the door. Back in his room, Asta finally consumes the item and is blown away by the changes happening to his body. His mana reserves skyrocket from just a 10% absorption. Even his physique is shifting into that of a legendary Flameborn. And trust me, you and I are just getting started. Absorbing this item leaves 0 impurities in his body. Unreal. Alright, you and I are about to see if our main character is walking straight into a trap. He knows the academy is a golden ticket to finding a sponsor, and the perks are massive. But even so, he can't shake the feeling that he's being lured into a cage. Asta decides to clear his head and run. He barely makes it out the door before a stranger calls his name. Asta stops and turns, sizing up the guy's appearance, which features sharp platinum blonde hair. Since Damon is a direct descendant, Asta figures this guy has to be a relative. So, he decides to play it cool and lie, claiming he's not the Asta he's looking for. The guy is stunned. He was told exactly what Asta looked like, and the person in front of him is a perfect match. Asta doubles down, explaining that the lighting can totally change his hair color, so clearly, there's a whole lot that might be different here. Surprisingly, the dude buys it. He apologizes for the mix-up and turns around to head out. Now pay attention, because one tiny slip-up is about to ruin everything. Alfredo rushes in, shouting Asta's name at the worst possible time. Just like that, Alfredo blows his cover right in front of the stranger who was about to walk away. The guy whips around instantly. He knew he was right because Asta just has one of those unpleasant faces. With his lie exposed, Asta has no choice but to drop the act and admit who he really is. This gets the guy heated, but once he realizes Alfredo is standing right there, he decides to back off. Instead, he tells Asta to meet him at the Mage Hall later for a quick lesson in manners and a beating. Once he's gone, Alfredo checks to see if Asta is okay. Asta plays it off, but deep down, he was already looking for a reason to let off some steam. To him, this guy is just the perfect test subject. He's heading to that hall, and he's bringing the heat. Next, Asta asks Alfredo for a quick meeting with Gamo. Moments later, he's standing right inside her office. Gamo is shocked to see him this early in the morning. She asks if he's finally reached a decision about the academy, and he tells her yes. To her surprise, he tells her flat out that he's going to enroll, just like they wanted. Gamo is stunned, but the relief on her face is clear as day. She promises to get everything ready immediately. Asta heads out, passing Alfredo on his way into the room. Alfredo asks for the verdict, and once Gamo confirms the news, he starts celebrating like he just won the lottery. See the trick here? They cover his first semester fees, knowing he won't be able to pay for the next one. They're betting on him getting hooked on learning and getting desperate once the money runs out. That's when Alfredo plans to swoop in and help. Gamo finally has to tell him to pipe down because he's being way too loud. Alfredo apologizes and heads to the kitchen for breakfast prep. Once he's out, Gamo just shakes her head, knowing exactly why he's so hyped. He sees this as his big chance to finally groom Asta into becoming his successor as the head butler. Gamo thinks the whole plan is a bit sloppy, but Alfredo is confident. After all, the previous head butler used the same trick on him. Asta eventually makes his way over to the mage hall, just like that jerk told him to. He opens the door and finds a hooded mage waiting. The man asks him what business he has there. Since Asta doesn't even know the brat's name, he starts to fumble his words. Suddenly, the mage brightens up, saying he's been expecting him. He leads Asta toward another room, telling him to come inside but to make sure he watches his head. As Asta steps in, he's nearly hit by a swarm of flying notes. Now he completely gets why that warning was necessary. That's when he meets a man who introduces himself as Wenji von Blondor. Wenji asks if he's here for his little brother, leaving Asta totally confused. He wonders if that brat from earlier is actually related to this guy. Looking at him, Asta remembers one specific thing about mages from his past life. They all share a very specific problem. Their hair gets messy, it starts falling out, and eventually, the hair just stops growing altogether. Basically, Asta has broken this down into 3 stages. Stage 1 is denial, where they hide it under robes. Stage 2? That's when they just give up and let the bald spot shine. And Stage 3 is total acceptance, where they finally just shave it all off and go completely smooth. Then comes Stage 4, where they research magic to make the impossible a reality. They'll try every spell in the book to regrow their hair. But honestly, no one has ever succeeded. But none of these stages seem to apply to Wenji, who looks perfectly fine standing there. Wenji apologizes for his brother, while Asta asks if he's Academy staff. Stick with me, the real journey is just beginning. Let's jump into the moment Asta discovers Wenji is actually a vice dean while getting a drink. Asta is genuinely impressed that Wenji holds such a high rank at a prestigious academy like that. Asta knows he didn't get that rank just from his family name. He must be incredibly skilled. Wenji just laughs, teasing that Asta is a different breed himself. Wenji reveals he's aware Asta has been encouraged to enroll in Xenon Academy, which is a massive deal. Wenji congratulates him, calling it a prime chance for Asta to truly sharpen his magic skills. He mentions that he actually graduated from the same academy back in the 145th class. Asta is totally bored. He didn't ask for this guy's resume or all these extra life details. Wenji catches the vibe and apologizes, admitting he's just babbling because he's a little too excited. Wenji suggests they finally get to the main point, but before that, he tells Asta there is one thing he must confirm. He asks if Asta would risk his life for a friend. Asta is just completely thrown by the question. This involves the Blondor family reputation. Wenji reaches into his storage space and pulls out an old book. Now watch Asta's face as Wenji offers him this legendary tome in exchange for his life. This book holds the Blondor secret technique, the legendary power of healing light. Meanwhile, Gamo is tending to her garden while thinking about Damien's academy transfer. She is glad everything went smoothly. She also reflects on what a truly great friend Asta has been to Damien. She knows Asta has a good heart, despite Alfredo saying he acts like a jerk. Gamo isn't worried because every kid has a shameless side. Gamo is relieved that Asta's attitude didn't change at all, even after he learned about Damien's real background. People like Asta are rare, which is exactly why she wants to keep him close to her family. But Gamo knows the truth. Asta is a free bird who won't let anyone put him in a cage. Still, she is going to figure out some way to keep Asta right where she needs him. For the sake of her son, Damien, she'll do anything to keep Asta close. Meanwhile, Asta wonders why Wenji is handing over such a massive family secret. He scans the room and the man, trying to see if this whole thing is a trap. Wenji tries to read Asta's face, but he finds nothing. It's like the boy is wearing a mask, making it impossible to uncover his true identity or feelings. Wenji tells Asta to think his answer through before speaking. He shouldn't let the shiny reward in front of him blind his judgment. Asta looks him in the eye and says he'll give his answer now. He says if the request is doable, he'll do it. If not, then there's no reason to talk further. Stick with me, because Wenji just dropped a threat. Hearing this proposal alone puts Asta's life at risk. and refusal means Wenji might just kill him. Without a hint of fear, Asta tells Wenji to go ahead. You only get one life to live anyway. Even though this is technically Asta's second chance at life, Wenji unleashes a crushing, terrifying aura to intimidate Asta, but the boy remains completely unshaken. Realizing he doesn't scare easily, Wenji smiles, telling Asta he has passed the test. He explains that he needs someone trustworthy, but it can't be anyone from within his own family circle. Wenji babbles for a bit before finally revealing what he really wants from him. This isn't some internal power struggle. The Blondor family is actually very tight, but Wenji admits he's being watched closely by the powerful Declan family. Asta is stunned. He asks why on earth the Declan family would be keeping tabs on him like that. Since Asta isn't afraid of dying, Wenji finally opens up about the massive problem he's currently facing. He's been researching the Declan family's origin magic and thinks he might have finally found a major breakthrough. He somehow managed to get his hands on the Declan family's exclusive Heavenly Origins magic. Asta's face goes pale. He realizes he is essentially sitting across from a man who's already marked for death. He asks Wenji if all this research is just to destroy it. Wenji reveals the truth. He found a way to actually improve their secret art and turn it into perfection. Asta realizes he's sitting with a complete madman who clearly has zero regard for his own safety or life. Wenji admits he just couldn't resist the scientific urge to see if he could actually pull it off. Asta thinks he's a lunatic, but he realizes the timing of this discovery matches his past life memories perfectly. In his past life, when Declan destroyed the Blondors, Wenji was busy researching the mysterious new 10,000 circle. Trust me, you and I are about to see why Declan wiped them out to stop the terrifying power of that 10,000 circle. Alright, you and I are about to see Asta realize that Declan likely absorbed a power making him insanely strong. WJI asks Asta if he is available to help take his research to the next level. Asta is skeptical, though why exactly did he come to him for this specific mission? It turns out WJI can't trust his own family. He suspects there's a mole hiding in the shadows, but he hasn't been able to flush them out just yet. Asta suggests it might be a secretary, but WJI disagrees. He thinks the leak is probably tied to how they are acquiring their resources instead. WJI reveals that he started covering his tracks the second he felt watched. Asta wonders why he doesn't just side with Declan, since they would definitely welcome him with open arms. WJI makes it clear he has his own personal reasons for refusing to join them. Since Asta isn't tied to the Blondor family, he's the perfect wildcard to handle this secret job. It's a joint research project, WJI admits. But right now, progress has hit a total dead end. The reward will be worth it though. WJI just needs him to deliver a thesis to Professor Perun at Xenon Academy. The prize is a healing light spell. Asta smells a massive opportunity and decides he's going to take full advantage of it. Now pay attention here, because Asta counters with a much better deal. He wants that healing light spell as compensation, and he wants the 1,000 circle once it's finally finished. He's going all in, double or nothing. WJI admits that Asta is a truly shameless jerk for asking that, but since the mission is so critical, he really has no choice but to say yes. He promises to hand over the spell once it's ready. However, WJI makes it clear that he has one major condition of his own for Asta. He needs Asta to help him out before the entire project is completed. Asta doesn't hesitate for a second. He's totally fine with those terms. Taking the thesis, Asta jokes about not being able to read before admitting he's just messing around. He then asks WJI if this Professor Perun is someone he can actually trust. WJI reveals that he and Perun were academy schoolmates who have always been bitter rivals. They were always trying to outdo one another in everything, but that rivalry finally ended once WJI returned to his family duties. Asta can't believe he's about to meet another lunatic like WJI at the academy. Once he gets to his room, he receives a massive pile of books. WJI included a letter with them too. In it, he explains the exact order Asta needs to study if he wants to properly sharpen his knowledge. Time to get moving. Asta starts organizing everything, admitting that WJI is a total genius. He then starts writing down a list of book sponsors, and WJI is sitting right at the top. He plans to put the Healing Light book in a tower once he finally builds it. This gives everyone a chance to read it, though he knows he's going to have to discuss all of this with Damien later on. He plans to use his friend's privilege to get Damien on board. Asta is already proud of what he's building as he aims to get people learning magic. You and I can tell this meeting was huge. Asta sees it as a turning point, and WJI is just as hyped about his very interesting new recruit. What really impressed him? The fact that Asta didn't even flinch when death was on the line. The threat was real, but Asta showed zero signs of fear, which only made WJI more intrigued by him. WJI could see it in his eyes. Those were the eyes of someone who just doesn't fear death. WJI is glad he's found someone actually useful instead of the usual pigs he works with. He can sense Asta is hiding things, but he considers that a major plus. In his eyes, Asta is someone who shares the exact same dream that he does. Before long, Asta is packing his gear and finally slipping into his new academy uniform. Lance arrives to pick him up, mentioning a simple document registration they'll have to handle once they arrive. She then drops some good news. Asta and Damien are actually exempt from the entrance exams. Lance compliments how he looks in the uniform, and Asta plays the gentleman, thanking her for the kind words. Asta thinks about the exemption he and Damien got and realizes it's a major perk reserved for only the most prestigious families. It's called a special admission, and Asta is definitely not complaining about getting one. Asta arrives at the carriage to find Damien and his mother waiting. She tells the boys to stay safe at the academy, and Asta quickly acknowledges her. Gammo adds that she's praying for Asta to achieve all the results his heart desires. Asta smiles and thanks her for the blessing. Deep down, he knows the academy is packed with opportunities, and he's looking to grab every single one of them. He's also pretty excited to finally meet his new classmates. On the way, Asta starts checking out that light spell book WJI gave him. And trust me, you and I are going to see how noble interpretations make even these complex techniques look simple. Looking at the options, Asta figures WJ's version is the only one that actually fits Declan's celestial principles. Alright, you and I are heading to one of the most famous schools in this world, Xenon Academy. Lancency pulls the reins, letting everyone know the carriage ride ends right here. Rules are rules. The founding principle decreed that every student walks the final stretch, no matter their status. This is where they part ways. Lancency says her goodbyes, wishing the kids luck as they start their new academy life. Once they hop out, Damon grabs Asta, panicking that they need to sprint to the ceremony right now. Apparently, Lancency warned him that if they're late, there won't be any seats left. Asta's just confused. This is a prestigious academy ceremony, not some local village theater with first come, first served seating. Then it clicks, Lancency said it. He realizes she just threw out that bait to make sure Damon didn't waste any time dragging his feet. For once, Asta decides to just go with the flow and play along. They hit the ceremony hall, and Damon is absolutely floored by the massive crowd gathered inside. Despite half the room being empty, Damon's still convinced they barely made it in time because of Lancency's warning. Asta can't believe his friend is still naive enough to fall for such an obvious trick. Asta pulls out their reservations to find their actual spots, but Damon is already pointing at random seats and suggesting they sit there, leaving Asta totally baffled. He can't wrap his head around it. Damon was trying to run away before, but now he's suddenly the most excited guy in the room. Now pay attention here, because a certain giant is about to turn this excitement into a real problem. This giant looks down at Damon like he's nothing but a bug. Asta quickly steps in to help his friend up, checking if he's okay. Damon says he's fine, playing it off and blaming the collision on the fact that he just wasn't looking where he was going. They try to walk away, but Exter stops them dead. Turns out, Damon accidentally got some spit on the guy's fancy clothes. While Asta's processing this, Damon rushes back to help clean it off, but he ends up making it way worse by adding even more saliva. That's the final straw. Exter loses it and swings a massive punch right at Damon's face. But Asta catches the blow mid-air. He tells the big guy to drop the tantrum before he makes a mistake he'll really regret. Fuming, Exter demands to know who Asta is. Damon just chimes in, saying Asta's his best friend. Asta nods, and Exter finally realizes why he stepped in, but he warns Asta that he's about to regret that decision very soon. Asta sees exactly where this is heading, and honestly, he's perfectly fine with it. It's clear Exter wants to talk with his fists, not his mouth. Naturally, the rest of the students start noticing the drama unfolding. Turns out, Exter is a direct descendant of the famous DeLumpy family. The crowd is already taking bets. Most of them are putting their money on Exter, convinced he's going to crush the competition. Not everyone wants blood, though. One student tries to step in and stop the fight before things get completely out of hand. He argues that they can't even have a proper duel in such a crowded room. Problem solved, another student throws up a magical barrier so they can go all out without hitting the spectators. The hall erupts in cheers for Exter. Everyone's shouting his name, rooting for the noble to win the day. Let's pause for a second. See that creepy guy in the back? Something tells me he knows exactly how this ends. Inside the barrier, Exter introduces himself and demands Asta's name. Asta just shrugs, saying he wasn't born a fancy noble like him. He tells Exter to just think of him as some random guy passing through. Feeling cocky, Exter offers Asta the first move since he's a mage. Asta just laughs, taking a playful dig at Exter's massive ego. That's enough to set Exter off. He charges in like a maniac, but Asta reminds him that he's actually fighting two people today. Asta slips the punch and counters with a heavy hit right to the face, sending the giant stumbling backward. Exter is in shock. That punch had way too much weight behind it for a normal student. He's starting to doubt if Asta is really a mage. Suddenly, he realizes Damon has actually cast a healing spell on him. He's confused why his enemy is healing him, but he has no idea he's about to experience the most brutal beating of his life. While he's distracted, Asta closes in and sinks a heavy fist into his gut. Before Exter can even blink, a barrage of blows rains down. Then it hits him. These two are a nightmare team. One beats him down while the other heals him up just to repeat the process. He's forced to admit it, he's picked a fight with some absolute psychopaths. For the first time, Exter is actually feeling pure terror. So, what do you and I take from this? Well, don't pick on the new guys unless you want a never-ending beating. Let's watch as this underdog finally flips the script on a total beast. Exter finally snaps, calling Asta nothing more than a puny magician as he throws a wild, angry swing. Asta acknowledges the effort, but Exter screams back in rage. He puts everything into his next punch. The impact sends Asta flying, and the students start going wild now that Exter is actually fighting. But Exter does not feel good about it. Even though he connected, the hit felt suspiciously light. Showing off some insane reflexes, Asta spins through the air and sticks the landing perfectly. Exter is stunned, but he charges again anyway. Meanwhile, Asta spots Damien still healing the big guy. Asta realizes this healing loop is trouble. If he wants to win, he needs one decisive blow. To end this, Asta taps into a secret technique developed with his comrades in a past life. By colliding magical particles, he extracts pure energy. It is not exactly magic or martial arts. Instead, it is a brilliant, technical application of the raw properties of mana itself. Now pay attention, Asta waits until Exter is right on top of him before unleashing his secret technique. The shockwave is so massive it blinds the crowd and shatters the barrier. Everyone is speechless. Through the smoke, the giant Exter finally hits the deck and passes out cold. Total silence hits the arena. Nobody can believe the mighty Exter just got dropped by one punch. Asta raises his hand like a true warrior while the rest of the students suddenly start cheering him on. They are all starting to wonder if a mere magician could really fight with that level of elite skill. Damien is hyped about the victory, and Asta gives his eccentric friend a little pat on the head. From the shadows, that mysterious guy from earlier just watches Asta with a very knowing smile. Suddenly, a teacher arrives to break things up, shocked that students are already brawling on day one. He demands to know who started this. But the students love the show, so nobody is ready to snitch. Asta is already planning a quick escape, but Damien is about to ruin everything with his weird and totally unhinged behavior. The kid screams to get the teacher's attention and proudly confesses that he and Asta did it. Asta just closes his eyes in pure frustration as the teacher stomps right over to them. While Exter stays knocked out, the two boys are dragged to the office for a serious scolding. Luckily, the teacher lets them go since Damien was so brutally honest about the whole thing. Plus, a quick medical check shows that Exter is not actually in any real danger. They head back to the hall just in time for the ceremony, feeling everyone's eyes on them. The students are whispering, unable to believe this frail kid actually took down a massive martial artist. Asta tries to stay low-key, but Damien is waving at the crowd like he is some celebrity. Asta is dying inside. He never wanted this much attention on his very first day. Trust me, you and I both know a friend like Damien who just cannot stay quiet while searching for their seats. Before long, the headmaster, a short old man with white hair, takes the stage to address the crowd. Even after several minutes of talking, the old man shows zero signs of weakness, which actually impresses Asta. Meanwhile, Damien is fast asleep and drooling so much that Asta has to physically pull him up. The speech is in full swing when an assistant rushes over with some urgent, high-priority news. He tries to ignore the interruption, but once he hears the details, he has no choice but to cut his speech and hand the podium over. A lady with bright hair takes over, and her booming voice sends a literal shiver down every spine. Even Damien, who was dead to the world, jumps awake at the sound of her thunderous scream. She introduces herself as Jara and announces she will be handling the rest of the ceremony. Jara calls for the freshman oath, starting with the Magic Division representative, Dahlia Denai. The name sends a shock through the crowd. Nobody expected the legendary Denai family to be here. Some think she is only here because her skills are lacking, but others quickly jump to her defense. They argue there is no way her skills are lacking, as her family would never let her take the exam otherwise. But Asta knows her true identity. Trust me, you and I are about to see if this famous family is actually elite. Let's dive into the story of Dahlia, the powerhouse mage, destined to lead the elite Denai family. Asta admits she is highly skilled, mostly because she helped him out once, but they clash so much that everyone knows them as bad friends. Hearing she joined the class this year brings a smirk to Asta's face as he celebrates having her around. As Dahlia takes the stage, Jay shifts his focus to Paul, the lethal martial arts division representative. Since no title was announced, Asta figures this guy is definitely not a noble, and he likely doesn't come from a prestigious family background either. After the duo finishes their formal oath, they turn around and head back to their assigned seats. Next, Dra announces that she will be introducing the professors responsible for teaching this year's elite class. As the faculty steps forward, Dahlia walks down and locks eyes directly with Asta, sending a shock through him as if she is piercing his soul. Suddenly, Dahlia misses her footing. She tumbles down the stairs in a totally embarrassing wipeout. just as Professor Parun of Basic Magic Principles steps onto the stage. Asta notes that this guy is nothing like Wuji, but he decides to hold off on his final judgment for now. Once the ceremony wraps up, Draw instructs the students to check their assignments and head to their designated dorms. Damon finally wakes up, and you and I know Asta can't resist pranking him by claiming he was expelled for sleeping. Damon hears the news and screams at the top of his lungs, completely losing his mind. Heading to his dorm, Asta actually regrets the prank, because he never expected Damon to scream like a dying banshee. Asta enters his new room and is genuinely impressed by the sleek design, especially with all the high-end supplies stocked in the corner. While unpacking his gear, his new roommate Paul suddenly walks through the door, looking serious. Asta is taken aback by Paul's icy demeanor, which screams that he doesn't care about anything. Then, Paul finally speaks. He coldly tells Asta that they should keep things quiet, making it very clear he is not here to make friends. Paul bluntly says he couldn't care less about what Asta does, as long as it never interferes with his own life. He would even prefer if they never spoke again after this. But Asta is not the type to back down. Now watch this, because Asta isn't scared of anyone and immediately jumps into an intense stare-off with Paul. Asta stays perfectly silent, which clearly ticks Paul off until he demands to know why he isn't getting an answer. Internally, Asta wonders just how deadly the top-ranked student really is, so he decides to test him with a lightning-fast fake charge. Paul goes for his sword in a flash, and Asta immediately notes that his combat stance is practically flawless. Even his sword placement proves he is a seasoned fighter, but the tension breaks when Asta hears Damon calling his name from outside. Asta flashes a casual smile as if nothing happened, telling Paul he is perfectly free to do whatever he wants. Since they are both staying out of each other's hair, Asta jokes that he might start singing at 2 a.m. just for fun. After riling Paul up and leaving him confused, Asta coolly turns around and walks out of the room. Asta meets up with Damon, who is dying to know who his roommate is, only to be shocked when Asta says he doesn't know. Damon lets it go and suggests they take a tour of the academy grounds, since there is so much for them to discover. Damon is determined to see every single inch of the place before their very first day is over. The academy is massive, so the faculty warned everyone to learn the layout quickly, unless they want to get lost for the entire semester. It sounds like a total hassle, but Asta is game because he is trying to figure out just how many troubleshooters are hiding in the academy. The two start wandering the campus and eventually hit a lake, causing Damon to freak out with disbelief like he always does. Asta realizes exactly why Lance was stuck with Damon. The guy acts like a total baby about everything. Annoyed by the whining, Asta tells Damon to just have his family build him a lake if his estate is missing one. Asta jokes that it is easy, just dig a massive hole and fill it up with water. Damon actually loves the idea and excitedly vows to tell his family to build an even bigger lake than the one they are seeing. While brainstorming a name for his future lake, he settles on calling it Blood, Sweat, and Tears. When they spot a cool-looking statue, Asta tells Damon he should definitely get his family to build one of those too. Asta keeps feeding him wild ideas, even suggesting they shape it like a dragon so the shimmering scales look absolutely gorgeous. Back at home, Lance suddenly catches a really weird vibe, making her wonder if something is going terribly wrong. After a long walk, Asta suggests they head back to the dorms, having already spotted 7 potential troubleshooters during their tour. Trust me, you and I need to stay alert, because Asta estimates there are at least 10 troubleshooters in total. Alright, you and I are about to see Asta track Parun's lab to the second magic hall. He quickly connects the dots. The troubleshooters are definitely hunting Parun. Since Declan already knows WJI has allies, he is already suspecting Parun for being in the area. Asta wondered why they had not moved yet, but they timed their strike perfectly. Asta decides to take matters into his own hands to see what they know. He puts himself in the perfect position to hear 2 troubleshooters talking right now. The first one mentions an emergency directive they have to regroup at the target's nest. When asked if they are hitting the main target or the sub, he says it is the sub. They plan to deliver the objective by midnight. It is clear now that since WJI moved, Parun is their mark. The troubleshooters are not worried about the professors. And get this, they know that Declan himself won't even be showing up to lead the fight. Now pay attention, because the fire demon Callahan is about to join the hunt. This is huge because Callahan is the vice leader of the Red Jewel Mage Corps. This basically means their operation is fully covered. It tells us that Declan is ready to do absolutely anything for this mission. It also means the troubleshooters are at risk, since they are just disposable pawns used to ensure the mission succeeds. Even though they are terrified, these guys have no choice but to follow orders. The two move out to join the rest of the team to make sure they have enough numbers. Unknown to them, Asta heard everything they said. Asta heard it all, and he is genuinely surprised that Callahan of all people is actually coming on this mission. Asta remembers that Callahan is not some small fry that should be taken lightly. Back when Asta was a troubleshooter, Callahan was in his prime. The Declan family once bet everything on a massive battle. Callahan remained loyal even to the crumbling house after the war, which shows his insane level of devotion to them. Though he is currently dangerous, he really entered his prime after the brutal war with the Blander family ended. He basically carved his name into history as a war mage, using deadly fire that is completely unstoppable in battle. Since Callahan is coming, Asta figures it is important to capture him and study his magic, which is one of the Declan flame arts. The risks are high, but Asta knows the reward is worth it. He is pretty satisfied with how things are playing out. Okay, I know what you are thinking, but the real thesis? It is with Asta, not Perun. Since they are still going after Perun, Asta wonders if his thesis is the real one. It seems the thesis being delivered today is nothing but a fake. Later at the dorm, Paul gets ready. Turns out he is one of the troubleshooters. He thinks Asta is sleeping right now, but unknown to him, the Asta he is looking at is actually just a dummy. Perun is in his study when he finally senses the troubleshooters because they just encroached on his private territory. He wonders why these guys are bold enough to enter the academy. Then it hits him that the one approaching is a mercenary. Surprisingly, it is Paul. He is able to very easily recognize him through his unique aura. He tells him he should probably refine his ether traits next time. That is, if there even is a next time for him. Paul passes an envelope to him, and Perun realizes it was WJI. Perun wonders what kind of game WJI is playing with all these tricks. Suddenly the office door explodes, and Callahan strolls inside, leaving fear on Paul's face while Perun remains completely calm. Callahan can see the fear on Paul's face. He knows exactly who he is facing. He turns to Perun and asks if he has heard of him. Perun coldly says no and tells him to get to the point immediately. This pisses Callahan off, though he admits this is the first time he has been treated so badly. Callahan lays out the terms. First thing on the list, Paul has to die. Then he tells Perun he is going to leave him with one arm and one eye. Callahan shoots a fireball at Perun, who blocks it with counter-ice power, causing a massive explosion that rocks the whole building. Perun turns to Paul. He tells him his life is his own responsibility now, since he is acting as a mercenary. Paul draws his sword to defend himself, and that is where we leave it, stuck in a blackout spell with no help coming. Trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. Let's dive into this high-stakes standoff together. He knows it is exactly why he is here. That envelope is a delivery from the Trash Blander family intended for Perun. Since Perun refuses to hand it over, Callahan decides to drop the act and go all out. He lets loose a massive flame spell that rocks the earth, but Perun stays frosty, activating his ice powers to counter whatever heat Callahan throws at him. Right then, the other troubleshooters make their move, and Pun finally gets serious, unleashing a strike so powerful the entire building starts to crumble. Watching from a distance, Asta realizes things are escalating way faster than he expected. Hyped to finally see some real action, Asta pulls on his mask, declaring that he is no longer Asta, but Troubleshooter 1. He clenches his fist in a prayer to the moon, asking for the strength to be a top-tier troubleshooter today, even if he is not exactly a saint. After his prayer, he leaps toward the battlefield as the building begins caving in. Inside that collapsing ruin, Callahan is actually having the time of his life. He is shocked Paul is still breathing after that onslaught, and actually gives the guy some props. Honestly, Paul would be dead meat right now if not for that protective talisman from WJI. He had no idea it was a shield, and considers himself incredibly lucky to have it on. Perun speaks to Paul in a voice like ice, telling him to get out of the way before launching a massive blast. He gives Paul a pat on the shoulder, admitting the guy has done enough to earn his trust. To Paul's absolute shock, Perun shows off his skills by infusing the guard's sword with pure ether. He asks if Paul can keep blocking, and Paul promises to hold the line as long as necessary. Paul realizes they are way past the point of no return. If he fails to hold out, he is dead for sure. Callahan is actually impressed by the pairing, since a mage and guard are exactly what he needed for a fight. Then Callahan fires off another fireball, and this time around, Paul's sword finally fails him. He is smashed into the wall, leaving Perun with no other choice but to drop the act and get really serious. Look, when the amount of mana in nature is limited and two authoritative beings issue orders at the same time, a brutal struggle for control begins between those entities. Perun wants to test Callahan's durability, and Callahan is more than happy to accept a direct duel. They both erupt with power, and the building takes the brunt of it, starting to disintegrate. The building crumbles, and Paul falls after losing his balance. As he drops, all he can see is two monsters going up against each other without holding anything back at all. Paul eventually slams into the ground, wondering why he even bothered joining a fight where he is clearly out of his league. Over at the sidelines, the troubleshooters are stunned by the level of destruction these two are creating. Now, pay attention. Asta appears behind them and starts cleaning house, sending the troubleshooters into a total state of panic as they realize they are being taken out. Trust me, you are going to love this. After sweeping the trash out of his way, Asta heads straight for the main event. His sudden entry freezes both fighters, as they wonder which side this newcomer is actually on. Moving at blinding speeds, Asta snatches Callahan by the throat and tells him his journey ends right here. Terrified, Callahan panics and fires a point-blank blast, but the move triggers a painful mana backlash. He coughs up blood, realizing to his absolute surprise that Asta is unhurt and already dashing back for more. Meanwhile, the other troubleshooters are closing in. Callahan figures out he has to suppress that mana backlash if he wants a chance. He whips out a potion and downs it while wondering where on earth someone as strong as Asta even popped out from. The troubleshooters swarm Asta, but he effortlessly blocks their strikes and sends them flying with a brutal counter. Callahan is stunned. He is actually getting impressed because Asta moves with such cold, surgical precision and extreme efficiency. Despite the respect, Callahan is beyond pissed now and vows to end Asta's life personally. He furiously summons a bunch of magic circles to prepare his most devastating fire attack yet. The flames are so intense that Callahan incinerates his own men, leaving even Asta stunned. Through the thick smoke following that last attack, Callahan wonders if he finally caught Asta. He knows his allies were hit too, but he really does not care about those casualties. You and I just saw a man who will burn everyone to win. Wild, right? Alright, you and I are about to see if Asta survived that blast because Callahan definitely thinks he is dead. He starts grinning, thinking he went a bit overboard. He figures he will get the jump on Perun if he teams up with the other troubleshooters. But then, his blood turns to ice as he hears Asta's voice from the shadows, mocking him and asking if that was really his best shot. Asta knows Callahan's type, predicting the man would gladly sacrifice his own soldiers if it meant taking him out along with them in the process. Hovering above, Asta locks his magic circle onto the target, telling him he is about to pay for his choices with his life. Now watch closely, Asta unleashes a Mona bullet, and Callahan can only stare as death comes flying straight for his face. The Mona bullet slams into Callahan's skull, piercing right through him like a massive, high-caliber round. With Callahan dead, Asta admits the guy was actually decent, since any normal mage would have died from that first surprise attack. He admits Callahan's magic was as lethal as ever, but ironically, that final explosion actually worked in Asta's favor. Asta realizes he definitely would have lost if Callahan had joined the other troubleshooters to drag him into a long war of attrition. His power is growing, but Asta's mana reserves are still dangerously low. It is not exactly impressive. Not yet. Asta then walks over to Callahan's corpse to see what he can scavenge. He gets lucky and finds the grimoire he wanted. Most battle mages are paranoid and carry their spellbooks around everywhere they go. The spatial pouch has a built-in owner recognition spell. Asta is not worried, since he can just crack the spell later. Suddenly, Perun arrives and Asta tells him he is late to the party. Perun says he was busy mopping up the small fries that were still hanging out. Perun asks if Asta is an enemy, but Asta tells him to use his brain because killing one of Declan's men should show exactly where he stands. When he hears that, Perun realizes WJ sent Asta and finally relaxes, but he is still confused as to why the person named Paul approached him earlier. He wonders if WJ is splitting the research into two separate papers, which would explain why he needed two different messengers. Asta suggests the one with Paul is likely a fake, used by WJ to lure Declan's men into the open like a fisherman reeling in a catch. He thinks WJ is trying to tighten security in the region while making sure Declan's influence is reduced to almost nothing. Let's pause here. You and I both know something is wrong when a massive fight happens and the Imperial Knights are nowhere to be found. Despite the blackout spell, this battle was intense, so the fact that no Imperial Knights appeared can only mean one very bad thing. This can only mean the Knights have been bribed by Declan, just like everyone else in this corrupt place. Perun asks if Asta is the real courier, and Asta proves it by pulling out the thesis and handing it over. After taking it, Perun asks if Asta knows what is inside, and Asta coolly replies that he is no fool. Perun takes a cautious stance, but Asta just tells him he does not mind a fight if that is what he wants. He warns the man to think carefully, because his next decision will determine whether he walks away or dies right here. Perun admits Asta has a point, and asks what he wants in exchange for the successful delivery. Perun explains that WJ only trusts people who are like him, so since Asta is similar, Perun feels he must earn his trust by giving him a fair trade. Asta thinks for a minute before telling Perun exactly what he wants in exchange. He simply asks for a book. Perun is confused, so Asta explains his grand plan to build a massive tower one day. He plans to fill the tower with books that absolutely anyone can come in and read for themselves. He wants a book written from Perun's own perspective on arcane science. Perun is shocked, but agrees to get it done. After their talk, Asta says it is time for him to leave, but Perun asks how they will stay in touch. Asta hands him a special communication crystal. He explains that the two halves are linked. If one is broken, the other one shatters instantly. He tells Perun to break one shard to call him, but break more than one if he is in real trouble. After explaining how the crystal works, he vanishes into thin air. Not long after, the Imperial Knights finally arrive to secure the scene. They evacuate the Academy students to protect them from any potential follow-up attacks. Asta managed to blend in with the students and meets Daman, who asks where he has been all this time. Meanwhile, Asta is certain that after this defeat, the Declan family will finally start to back off for a while. While Damon chats, Asta wonders why his sigil reacted, and trust me, you and I will find out soon. Alright, you and I are jumping into the moment Asta feels his secret power resonate within the barrier while blocking Callahan's heavy strike. Asta is honestly grateful, because it was that mysterious sigil that actually allowed him to block Callahan's deadly counterattack. He racks his brain trying to remember the details, and it finally clicks that this is the rejection phenomenon. This is a specific technique mages use to ensure the caster doesn't get shredded by the blowback of their own magic. Asta is so completely lost in his own troubled thoughts that he accidentally speaks out loud, which immediately makes Damien ask what he meant. Damien gets aggressive, demanding to know exactly what kind of secret Asta is hiding from him. Asta just ignores the guy, still wondering why the sigil reacted right then and what could have possibly been the trigger for it. Regardless, Asta realizes he needs to do more research. He is betting he will find some solid clues in the Academy library. Asta is just minding his business when a student suddenly calls out his name from right behind him. The guy introduces himself as Chenbi. Asta doesn't take him seriously until he mentions that Asta is a pretty skilled fighter. Now watch this part closely. You and I almost witnessed Asta take a life just to protect his secret identity. Before Asta can make a final decision on the guy, Chenbi mentions something that literally saves his life in that second. He says Asta's performance against the combat division during the entrance ceremony really left a massive impression on him. Asta finally realizes he actually earned some respect from the students, even though he thought he had just left a bad impression. Asta tries to be modest, telling Chenbi that his opponent was just low on ether and things would be different in a rematch. Chenbi just scratches his head nervously, but he keeps following the two, insisting that he really wants to stay with Asta. Chenbi smiles, explaining that he hasn't made any friends yet, and joining other established groups feels a bit too weird for him. Asta is not exactly thrilled with the idea, but he tells Chenbi to just do whatever he wants. Chenbi is honestly relieved, since he fully expected a rejection. Chenbi doesn't waste any time at all, immediately triggering a whole series of random conversations with Asta. It actually gives Asta a little bit of sanity, because he's been dealing with total lunatics since he returned in time. He had almost forgotten what it feels like to be normal. To keep this life, Asta knows he has to fully settle in. On their very first day of lectures, Damien is already complaining about how incredibly sleepy he is. Suddenly, Chenbi shows up too. He can't believe they are required to attend class after the absolute chaos that happened yesterday. Asta actually agrees with the guy, admitting that the schedule is pretty harsh. Let's keep an eye on this new guy. You and I might be looking at our main character's first real ally, and trust me, he really needs one now. That is when Chenbi mentions that their homeroom teacher for M3 is the famous Professor Jara. Asta is confused because he's never heard that name, so Chenbi explains that Jara is a serious big shot around here. Apparently, she once single-handedly slaughtered a whole horde of trolls. Just then, Jara enters, and Asta recognizes her from the ceremony. Jara stands in front of the entire class and calmly reintroduces herself. She tells them that the chaos at school yesterday has nothing to do with them, and they are all free to keep learning. Jara tells the students that before they do anything else, they are going to undergo a mana assessment test. This test measures both quantity and quality. Jara then asks the class which one they think is the most important. One of the students, a girl named Argan, raises her hand to answer the question. She says there is no perfect answer, but if one already has enough mana, then the quality matters more. Jara doesn't let her off easy, demanding to know the specific reason for that answer. She explains that when facing a mage of equal power, the one with superior mana quality would naturally have the advantage. When Asta hears this, he realizes the girl is basically just reciting a safe answer straight out of a textbook. With Asta's experience, he knows that mana quality affects the accuracy, stability, and raw power of every single spell. Basically, having a ton of mana is useless if you can't hit your target. Jara looks totally disappointed, and it's written all over her face. She demands to know Argan's family name, and the girl says she is from Baron Pelham's household. Jara looks absolutely disgusted, muttering that she should have guessed as much. This leaves Argan shattered and crying. Jara asks the class again, but now everyone is too scared to answer. Suddenly, she points directly at a student named Ipel, which completely startles the poor kid. He nervously stands up, and since he doesn't know the answer, he just guesses that mana quantity is the most important. So what do you and I take from this? Sometimes, quantity truly does have a quality all its own when you are fighting in a massive, all-out war. Stick with me, we're about to see a classroom lesson turn into a total power struggle. Just like Argan before him, Epipel gets the cold shoulder from Dra, who seems completely and utterly disappointed in every answer. Dra isn't ready to give up yet. She's determined to find a suitable answer, calling on students one by one. The room is buzzing with complaints. Everyone is already annoyed that she is stressing them out on the very first day. Meanwhile, Asta is deep in thought, trying to calculate what kind of answer would actually satisfy a mage like Dra. Suddenly, Dra stops. She admits she's heard enough, and acknowledges that most of them were actually getting close to the truth. But here's the twist, there was never a correct answer. She wasn't looking for a textbook definition from the start. Dra looks them in the eye and asks if those answers came from their hearts, or just to please her. She reminds the class that a true mage can never lose their conviction, regardless of when or where they are. They must stand tall against temptation, and possess the mental fortitude to uphold their own will until the very end. She challenges them once more. With the weak answers they provided, could they really call their mindset that of a mage? She reveals the most vital lesson of all. It's not just about skill, they must truly become mages in their souls. Message received. Asta realizes he was right, concluding that this lady has a seriously weird and twisted way of teaching. It's finally time for the mana measurement test, and the first name on the list is Argan. Dra stuns the entire class by announcing that Argan is going to be the official representative for their group. Since her earlier answer was so impressive, she'll be the one responsible for recording every single mana score today. Asta is shocked by this move, but he finally respects her style. Staying true to himself, he's actually quite impressed. The students gasp at the equipment. This kind of high-grade mana testing gear is extremely rare and hard to find. Now pay attention, because she's about to reveal their mana levels with a pretty terrifying smile. The goal is simple, find the monster hiding among them. Dra explains the device is actually quite easy to use. To demonstrate, she orders Argan to place her hand on the crystal orb and channel her energy directly into it. Argan steps forward and follows the instructions. Immediately, the device erupts into a blinding and brilliant light. It's mind-blowing. Dra ignores the secondary readings and points straight to the main indicator for the whole class to see. Mana quality ranks from 1 to 10. Argan scored a 4, which is incredibly impressive for a young first-year student. Argan turns bright red at the praise. She quickly bows and thanks Professor Dra for the massive compliment. Next up is mana quantity. All Argan has to do now is pour every ounce of her power into the machine. The counter stops at 17. Dra is genuinely surprised, because last year's top student only managed to hit a 15. Dra commends her effort. With a score that crazy, it's obvious Argan has been working harder than anyone else. The bar has been set high. Now the rest of the students are frantically praying they don't look like failures. Asta watches from the sidelines. He can tell that Argan has the potential to become a truly decent mage. Dra suddenly heads out to handle some business, leaving her assistant professor in charge of finishing the remaining measurements. One by one, the students step up to the orb to finally face the truth about their own magical potential. Let's pause. Chenbi is finally stepping up to Asta, and you and I know things are about to get loud. Asta agrees to go next, but Damien is back at it again, sleeping like a literal sheep in his chair. Suddenly, a student named Furion steps up. When her results flash on the screen, the entire room goes dead silent. Furion hits level 6 for quality and 20 for quantity. Absolutely insane. Asta notices something. Furion is from Dahlia's house, but the different hair color means she's likely from a branch family. The assistant is also stunned. It makes sense though, since Furion comes from such a prestigious and powerful lineage. He tells her she still has work to do, while Damien finally wakes up, looking completely lost and confused. Asta tells him to just go back to sleep, but then changes his mind and explains the mana measurement. Damien looks totally bored. He asks why they even bother doing these kinds of annoying experiments in the first place. Asta shrugs and says it's worth checking since it doesn't cost them anything to see where they stand. Hearing it's part of the official class session, Damien gets hyped and shouts that he's going to try it, too. Asta can't believe how fast he's rushing in. Meanwhile, the crowd is whispering about how incredibly young Damien looks. And that's where we leave it. Keep an eye on this group, because they're anything but ordinary. Alright, you and I are about to dive into one of the wildest monster tier reveals in this entire series. Damien steps up to the stage as the teacher encourages him to give the mana measurement device a shot. After a quick check, Damien places his hand on the orb. The second the reading pops up, the entire room goes dead silent. Nobody can believe their eyes. Even Furion nearly snaps her neck just trying to get a look at the scoreboard. Damien is officially in a league of his own. We are talking level 9 mana quality and a staggering quantity of 67. While everyone else is losing their minds, Asta is the only one standing there completely unfazed. Asta knows that true greatness usually leaves people frozen. He knew Damien was a genius, but he did not expect him to completely shatter the records. Damien, naturally, has no clue what he just pulled off and even asks if his score is actually good. That is when Asta realizes how Damien became such a beast. Still, he is certain Damien could have changed the entire world for the better if he had stayed on the right path. This time, he is going to guide him personally to make sure he never strays toward the darkness. The Blander family is the only group that can challenge Declan, and Asta plans to push Damien beyond his absolute limits. The teacher warns Damien not to let the fame get to his head, reminding him that hard work is still required. Damien casually assures the teacher that he totally gets it. Damien rushes over to ask about Asta's score. Trust me, You and I know the other students are just dying to compare the two of them right now. With no other option, he walks toward the orb, determined to keep things low-key and avoid any unwanted attention. Asta reaches out and touches the ball after carefully suppressing his mana, but he quickly realizes the threshold is set way too low, and even his small output is causing a total meltdown. The screen briefly shows a 10 before the entire machine screams out an error message. His power was simply too much for it to handle. While Damien cheers, Asta quickly suggests a retest, claiming the machine just had a random glitch to keep his secret safe. Of course, Damien is the only one who realizes that Asta is just trying to play it cool. After a reset, Asta dials his power back so far that the machine only reads 3 for quality and 15 for quantity. Just as he hoped, the other students buy the act without a second thought. Asta is relieved, his plan worked, but Damien is actually pretty annoyed by the fake score and lets out a curse word in frustration. Over at the First Department of Magic, Dra watches from her office as the second Mage Hall undergoes reconstruction. A moment later, Yervi, the assistant teacher, arrives with the latest mana measurement records in hand. Dra scans the list, noting that Damien's insane score means he is definitely going to need some serious guidance. Then, she spots Asta's report and notices the error from the first test. She instantly figures out that Asta is far from ordinary, and she realizes she needs to keep a very close watch on him. Later, we see the trio hanging out and using their magic to create toys together. Chenbi is absolutely floored by how easily Damien exerts such massive amounts of mana without even breaking a sweat. Watching this, Chenbi starts to realize that he is just a small fish in a very big, dangerous pond. Asta sees Chenbi's reaction and totally gets it. Honestly, you and I both know that facing reality is the only way to move forward. Once they finish playing, Damien admits he is actually having fun at the academy. Hearing this, Asta lets out a huge sigh of relief. He is just thankful that Damien is finally starting to adjust to academy life. Eventually, Asta finally cracks open the spatial pocket he found. It took him a whole month of effort because his magical sense was still so weak. During that month, he also successfully absorbed the elixir he got from Blander into his mana form. On top of that, he has been soaking up a massive amount of knowledge at the academy. Now that the spatial pocket is finally open, he dives straight in. The first treasure he finds is a rare potion. Next, he pulls out a cloak that seems useless, but he also finds a defensive artifact that is definitely a solid win. Finally, he discovers one of Declan's secret grimoires, the legendary Red Flame. This is a lesser secret spell derived from the Blue Flame, used by Faren himself. It is a terrifying magic strong enough to burn through almost any defense. Since he cannot master it instantly, he realizes that learning this spell is going to take quite a bit of training. A while later, the entire student body gathers for the highly anticipated midterm performance evaluation. Asta is shocked by the massive crowd, but Chenbi points out that every single first-year student is here today. Chenbi whispers rumors of a dangerous canyon breakthrough test. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see how this unfolds. Alright, you and I are diving into a midterm that is a 3-part nightmare. First is the trial corridor, a nasty sewer maze where students must reach the goal. Next, they have the canyon breakthrough, which is essentially a high-stakes race to the finish line. Finally, the simulator throws students into a deadly duel against either a skilled person or a monster. Asta knows these tests inside and out, so he is not breaking a sweat. All he has to do is pass, but he is genuinely worried about Chenbi, who lacks the raw talent that he and Damien possess. While the students argue about which test is coming, a booming voice suddenly commands everyone to shut their mouths. It is Professor Perun, and he makes a grand entrance, announcing that he will be the one overseeing this evaluation. Without wasting time, Perun drops the news that their first big challenge is going to be the trial corridor. Chenbi nearly loses his mind when he hears this, because the lazy plan he had in his head is already ruined. Perun orders the classes to line up immediately so he can explain the rules. He explains that the trial corridor is a sewer maze, and their objective is to navigate the filth to reach the gate. On paper, it sounds simple. Every single path eventually leads to the exit no matter which way you go. Chenbi starts grinning at this, convinced that this test is going to be an absolute walk in the park. But wait for it. Perun adds that a simple maze would be boring and completely meaningless for their grade. It turns out Perun has a nasty surprise waiting as he unveils a massive army of stored golems. Chenbi completely freaks out. He cannot believe they are actually using combat golems for a midterm performance evaluation like this. Perun admits these golems are slow and a bit dull, but they are still incredibly tough for students at their level. Luckily, their cores are exposed and their durability has been lowered, giving the students at least a fighting chance to win. Still, Perun warns them that these golems will easily corner them in such a cramped space. He sees the terror on their faces and honestly, he looks pretty disappointed. Even so, he is sure a few students have real potential. After scanning the crowd for a long moment, he decides Damien is not a top contender. To Perun, the guy looks completely uninterested and way too dull. He continues with the rules, explaining that these golems are essentially the gatekeepers of the trial. That means it is up to the students to either destroy them or find a way past. Then, he reveals each student gets a test bracelet with a built-in force field. The second that shield breaks, they are disqualified. At that point, the golems will just stop attacking and ignore them completely. Once the rules are finally set, Perun notices the students still look like they have zero motivation, so he decides to toss in an incentive. He tells them to impress him by any means necessary, promising the winner a personal reward that they will absolutely love. Now, you and I both know Asta. The second he hears about a prize, he gets fired up for the win. See, Rapida is the biggest library on the whole eastern continent, and it is strictly divided into 3 tiers: upper, middle, and lower. Because of his current status, Asta is stuck with access to only the boring lower-tier section. When he went there searching for secret clues, he could not find a single trace of the information he actually needs. Because of that, Asta realizes he needs to reach the middle or upper tiers if he wants to find the real answers. Problem is, those levels are restricted to royalty, the high nobility, and the most distinguished houses in the land. Apparently, there is one other way in, and that requires a personal recommendation from 3 or more academy professors. With that goal in mind, Asta knows he absolutely has to impress Professor Perun. Once the rules are finished, the professor gives them a short prep time to gather supplies. They can take basic items from the assistants to help them survive. The students immediately swarm the assistants, shouting and begging for high-level gear to give them an advantage in the maze. But most of those greedy requests are shut down. They are not allowed to bring anything that gives them an unfair edge. While everyone else is panicking and yelling, Damien calmly walks up and just asks for 20 vine seeds. The assistant professor is stunned. Why would Damien want seeds when that is not even his primary magic element? But Damien just shrugs, saying he does not have a primary element, so plant magic works just fine for him. Asta is genuinely shocked to see this. He did not think the lazy and nonchalant Damien would actually make any real preparations. At the same time, Asta is excited to see if Chenbi will finally step up and break his shell. Prep time is over. Perun announces that starting locations are being assigned, and everyone needs to check the board to find their specific entry point. Asta scans the list to see where he landed, and finds out he has been placed at starting point 3. He looks around and realizes his friends are far away. Trust me, things are about to get intense. Alright, you and I are about to watch Asta pull off the ultimate hustle in a room full of guys he barely knows. Out of nowhere, this arrogant jerk named Debay approaches him with 2 mindless lackeys. Since Asta knows his way around a blade, Debay makes a shady proposition. He wants to buy up the bracelets of any students who get eliminated during the test. He is offering 30 gold coins for every single one. He calculates 90 gold for Asta and his 2 friends, thinking he has an easy deal on his hands. Asta is actually shocked. 30 gold? That is what a normal peasant family earns in a whole month. Debay thinks Asta will jump at the cash since he is poor, but the noble's real goal is just self-preservation. Honestly, Asta does not mind the logic. Some might call it cowardice, but he sees it as making the best of every situation. If they are rich enough to throw money at their problems, why not let them? But then, Asta asks about the math. Debay assumes Asta is just greedy and bumps the offer up to 35 gold per person, total 105. Asta shakes his head. The math still does not work because Debay has 3 people on his own team too, making 6 targets in total. He looks Debay in the eye and asks why he did not count his own life. By Asta's logic, the bill for the whole group should actually be 210 gold. The trio is stunned into silence. Debay is fuming because Asta has way too much confidence for a commoner. Trying to regain control, Debay panics and raises the price to 40 gold coins per head. Asta immediately uses that against him, announcing that the total is now 240 gold. Debay is losing it. He can't believe this kid is haggling over a deal that could literally cost him his life. Realizing he can't win this argument, Debay decides to bail. He tries to walk away, saying the deal is off. But Asta stops him cold. Where do you think you are going? Asta tells him he already owes money, and that is the final straw for Debay. He demands to know what Asta is talking about, so Asta gives him a simple lesson using a carriage. Even if you drop luggage, Asta says you still pay for the passengers. With a cold, arrogant smile, he demands 120 gold for the 3 of them right now. The lackeys jump in to protect their master, telling Asta he is nothing compared to a noble. One of them gets way too brave and steps up to threaten Asta. Pay attention to this moment. The vibe shifts instantly when that lackey hears the ice in Asta's voice. Wanting to avoid a scene, Debay caves and pulls out the 120 gold. But Asta isn't done. He bumps the price to 160 because nobles are premium targets. Debay pays up but swears Asta will regret this. Finally, it is time for the test to begin as the students head into the corridor. Pune warns them that if their bracelet's barrier is broken, they are out of the game immediately. The field barrier is designed to react to any spells or attacks that are infused with mana. Once that barrier is gone, the wearer gets forcibly warped out while the bracelet stays behind as a trophy. Parun promises they do not have to worry about real injuries thanks to this safety system. With the rules set, the test finally begins. Students are warped into the arena as the live broadcast feed starts. While monitoring the map, Parun notices that Damien and Dahlia have been dropped in the same spot. Okay, I know what you're thinking, technology fail? Well, we are about to see something much wilder. The staff starts panicking, but Parun tells everyone to keep their cool. He personally checked the equipment, but he has no idea Asta is already throwing hands. See, Debay and his goons tried to jump Asta the second they landed. In this game, one magic hit means disqualification. Asta does not wait. He is a blur of motion, dodging their attacks like lightning. Before they can even blink, Asta is already on them, landing precise strikes to knock them out. He moves like the Flash, delivering heavy blows that send the trio crashing down. After wrecking them, Asta demands 320 gold for the disrespect. Trust me, you and I just learned never play him. Alright, stick with me as Asta strikes a deal to pay the guy 1 silver coin for every single hit he takes. By the time Asta finishes with Dubet, the guy looks like a human balloon. He then disqualifies the whole gang and swipes their bracelets with 0 effort. Since he still needs a recommendation, Asta realizes he needs 2 more bracelets to finish the trial. He stops to think, knowing he will also need another professor to vouch for him before this whole thing is over. He even considers bringing down the entire corridor by destroying the 4 main pillars. But he quickly shuts that down. Turning the entire eastern continent into an enemy would just be a one-way ticket to his own funeral. In the end, he decides his only real option is to just keep moving forward. Meanwhile, Damien has decided to do something absolutely insane. He is using vine seeds to hijack the golems, turning them into puppets to terrorize every student in his path. Panic spreads like wildfire. Everyone is wondering how the hell Damien is controlling golems with seeds. They try to fight back, but those vines make any magic spells they throw out completely useless. Amid the chaos, Chenbi decides that his only goal is to survive and qualify, so he stays out of trouble. He sprints away, looking for a place to hide. Suddenly, his bracelet starts glowing. Chenbi panics, thinking he got blasted by magic without even noticing it. Defeated, he just slumps right down, waiting to be kicked out of the testing grounds since he believes he is already disqualified. But minutes pass, and nothing happens, leaving him standing there looking like a total idiot and feeling confused. Now watch this. Because a sinister voice suddenly echoes through the entire area. The voice tells the students they have no demands, only a mission to punish anyone who has offended the great being. Damien was about to finish off a student, but he pauses to listen to whatever creepy message the voice is trying to deliver. Then, the voice drops a bombshell. It plans to slaughter every single student. That is the exact moment Parun and his assistants realize they are in deep trouble. Everything has gone offline. They have completely lost control over the entire system. Parun sees his assistants panicking and tells them to snap out of it and find the professors. He makes it clear that JRO must be their priority. The assistants immediately scramble to find the Academy's faculty. Parun is absolutely livid that someone has the audacity to interfere with the Academy's midterm evaluation like this. Meanwhile, every single golem in the corridor has fallen under enemy control. With the enemies pulling the strings, the golems are now moving with deadly, lightning-fast precision. Asta is caught off guard by how perfectly these machines are tracking his movements. He quickly realizes the controls have been hacked. Looking at the sheer number of them, Asta figures that every golem in storage has been set loose. Being the battle-hungry freak he is, you and I both know Asta. He decides to enjoy the fight while hunting the culprit. Chenbi is busy drowning in his own misery when he hears the sound of someone sprinting toward him. He turns around just as a figure finally emerges from the darkness. It turns out to be Asta. But just as Chenbi is about to rush over, he realizes Asta is being chased by a whole army of golems. Asta catches up to Chenbi and yells at him to start running for his life. Seconds into the chase, Asta realizes Chenbi has 0 stamina. If they keep this up, the golems are going to catch him in a heartbeat. Asta switches to plan B and demands that Chenbi hand over his bracelet immediately. Chenbi is lost, but Asta explains that the golems are targeting the bracelet specifically. They are linked to the control system, making them nothing but tracking beacons. Hearing that, Chenbi quickly hands it over, but he asks what the plan is. Asta tells him he will buy time so Chenbi can find Damien. Asta reminds him that he has a family, so he is the one who needs to survive. Those words hit home. Chenbi remembers his father and his entire family cheering him on since he was a young kid, telling him to put everything into his magic. Chenbi finally finds the courage to run, but he begs Asta to make it out of there alive. As he flees, Chenbi convinces himself he has to live. His family has sacrificed way too much to support him, and they deserve better than this. Suddenly, he remembers his father calling him his pride and joy. It hits him hard. He starts wondering if he is even someone to be proud of. You and I just saw a guy realize he is actually pretty pathetic. Alright, You and I are about to see a complete coward finally get his act together. Refusing to live with any more guilt, Chenbi turns around with a newfound fire in his eyes. He is determined that he is not going to give up. He decides to bet everything on the most powerful magic he is capable of. Stick with me here, because what happens next is pure magical chaos. This spell is known as the Spear of Earth, which sounds pretty epic. It is designed to pierce anything in its way, just like a heavy cavalry lance. Asta is still busy smashing golems when he hears Chenbi screaming his name. Turning around, Asta sees Chenbi with a bloody nose while he channels that massive spell. Thanks to that last-second warning, Asta barely dodges as the spell vaporizes everything in its path. Once the dust settles, a massive crater is all that remains. The strain is so bad that Chenbi starts coughing up blood. As he crashes down, Asta catches him. Exhausted, Chenbi begins rambling about how his master actually came to name this technique. He calls the spell grand, but Asta is not buying it for a second. You and I know he is right. It is not about the weapon. It is about the warrior. Suddenly, Chenbi starts acting like he is at death's door, so Asta just shoves a potion down his throat. He tells him he will be fine. And seconds later, Chenbi is back on his feet, looking totally dazzled. Now Asta has a problem. He cannot exactly drag this guy along through a literal war zone. He takes a moment to track the mana flow, finds a safe route, and points Chenbi toward the other students. When asked what he is doing, Asta just says he has some unfinished business to attend to. He has traced that foul mana straight to the control room and he is ready to check it out. As Asta gets closer to the room, a familiar, sickening feeling begins to crawl up his spine. He can clearly see this is not Declan. After racking his brain for a moment, he realizes he is up against the demonic realm. Memories come flooding back that unmistakable dark energy could only come from the depths of the demonic realm. Asta's face twists into his psycho grin as he realizes Faren is the rat behind all of this. Meanwhile, inside the control room, Faren is loving every second. His experiment is alive, the demonic beasts have manifested, and everything is functioning perfectly. It was all possible thanks to that creepy ancient artifact wrapped around his hand. It was all thanks to the spatial severing function of that artifact. Faren bypassed the demonic realm with 0 casualties and seized total control of the control room. He is celebrating his big win when a mysterious figure behind him starts questioning if he actually knew what he was doing. Faren just scoffs, claiming that generating this demonic energy finally fulfills the terms of their dark contract. The figure finally steps out from the shadows, his face hidden behind a mask. He tells Faren he is free to do whatever he wants. At the end of the day, all he wants is for a certain professor to be totally disgraced. Faren bows deeply, addressing the man as the great hound of House of Amar. The hound snaps back, telling him to keep that family name out of his trash mouth. Faren is boiling with rage inside. Being a vassal to Declan means he has to swallow his pride for now. Basically, Faren is doing all this so House Vimar gives him a lab for his experiments. Because of that, he is willing to endure any dishonor the hound throws his way. Plus, his group has finally formed their own forbidden magic sect known as Salvation. Suddenly, the hound asks how much longer until he controls the core, because a student is getting close. Instead of panicking, Faren is absolutely thrilled to have his very first test subject. He is dying to see what happens when someone is exposed to this massive concentration of demonic energy. Under normal circumstances, they should just die. But Faren says the ancient texts tell a different story. Apparently, high mana exposure works differently, ultimately creating a terrifying human beast. Asta is caught in a pincer move. Golems are behind him, and demonic beasts are waiting up ahead. Faced with an impossible choice, Asta decides to move forward. Faren is still grinning until he suddenly realizes something is off. Asta smirks, letting the villain know that he is coming for him. And that is where we leave it, trust me. You are going to want to see what happens next. Alright, you and I are jumping right into the fire, as Faren demands to know how this kid knows his name. Suddenly, Asta pulls out a pile of collected bracelets. In a blur of motion, he dashes forward, slapping them onto the demonic beasts. This basically turns the monsters against the golems in total chaos. The path is clear, while the enemies destroy each other. Asta just watches, while Faren holds his head, screaming as his own creations tear themselves apart. However, Faren realizes he is in deep trouble when he sees Asta smash right through the barrier, heading straight for the control room. The hound cannot even react before Asta is inside. He looks Faren in the eye and tells him he has been waiting a long time for this. Meanwhile, Chenbi and Damien reunite. Chenbi nearly loses it when he sees the absolute wreckage Damien left of those golems. Other students are there too, and Dahlia asks Chenbi how he even managed to find them. Now pay attention here, because Chenbi finally realizes those bracelets are actually tracking devices that need to be tossed. He warns the others, but they do not buy it. They think he is just trying to trick them into giving up their bracelets. Chenbi is floored. He reminds them that, with the world falling apart, nobody gives a damn about some stupid pieces of jewelry. He explains that these bracelets are linked to the control room, acting like a beacon for the enemy. One student asks if he figured it out himself, but Chenbi admits it was all Asta's idea. The second he says that, the girls start mocking him. They think trash like Asta is just playing Chenbi for a fool. One guy even claims Chenbi is just scared of failing alone and wants everyone else to sabotage their own scores too. The trash talk continues, but Chenbi is not having it. He knows exactly what Asta is capable of doing in a fight. Before things escalate, Damien's voice catches their attention, recalling the very first time he ever crossed paths with Asta. He tells them that their first meeting defined everything, and that is why his trust in him is absolute. Damien rips off his bracelet and tosses it away, telling the others they can have it if they are that desperate. He calls for Chenbi to move out, leaving Chenbi stunned. He is starting to realize he does not know the real Damien at all. Back in the control room, Asta tells Frizen just how much he has been looking forward to killing him. But Frizen is clueless. He has no idea who Asta is. Terrified, he begs the Hound to step in and protect him. The Hound looks at his master and asks if he is really sure he does not recognize the kid. Frizen insists there is no connection, so the Hound finally agrees to step in, simply because they are already under a contract. He draws a terrifying weapon, a lethal chainsword, promising Asta that he will not leave a single trace of him behind. But it turns out, Asta knows exactly who the Hound is thanks to the Weimar family. They are a high-tier clan, famous for having piercing power that matches the world's best archers. But they had a secret child raised in the shadows, the Hound, a man who lives like a literal hunting dog on the front lines of every slaughter. Asta just looks at him and asks why a warrior like him is serving trash like Frizen. The Hound is rattled hearing his family's name. He demands to know how Asta knows them, but Asta just repeats the question with cold eyes. At this point, the Hound assumes Asta has simply lost his mind from the fear of dying. He demands to know what Asta's game is, but Asta just keeps asking the same thing over and over. Furious, the Hound hurls his weapon at Asta. Asta dodges with ease, never breaking his rhythm or his question. Asta keeps closing the distance, but the Hound is confident he can strike him down before he gets close. Now watch this move. Asta catches the weapon midair just as the Hound tries to retract it. You and I saw that coming. Face to face now, Asta tells him he has raised dogs before, and they always get twitchy when you repeat the same sound. The Hound is absolutely livid. He cannot believe this brat is actually comparing a master warrior to a mutt. But Asta is not backing down. He is telling the guy exactly what he is. Before the Hound can blink, Asta strikes him with his own weapon. Frizen is paralyzed with fear, screaming at the Hound that he cannot lose to a nobody. But it is over. The Hound is already crushed. Asta delivers a brutal, bone-shattering punch to finish the job, leaving Frizen in total shock as his bodyguard hits the floor. Asta turns his gaze to Frizen, mocking him for always hiding behind someone else's shadow. Frizen loses it and reaches for a demonic device, but before he can even click it, Asta literally takes his hand off. And that is where we leave it, Frizen screaming in agony as blood sprays from his severed limb. What a way to end. Alright, you and I are about to see exactly what happens when you push a monster too far. Frizen finally realizes his time is up, screaming at Asta to stay as far away as possible. He tries to threaten Asta, warning him that the demonic realm will never stop if he is killed. Asta's response is absolutely bone-chilling. He tells Frizen he is perfectly fine waiting for the demonic realm to devour every single person. He tells the villain to just enjoy the show, because he is next. That is the exact moment Frizen realizes he is trapped with a total psycho. He cannot believe Asta is actually willing to let his friends die just to see this through to the end. Frizen stares in horror, honestly wondering if the man standing before him is even human anymore. He screams about everyone dying, but Asta just stares back at him with a cold and indifferent expression. When Frizen demands to know why, Asta lunges forward, stating that the solution is actually quite simple. He reaches out, grabs the man's right hand, and forcefully rips the artifact away. Watch closely, Asta reveals he's not the only one who knows how this artifact functions. He slides it on, places his hand directly on the core, and successfully shuts down the demonic realm for good. Frizen is completely frozen in shock as Asta promises him that he will never, ever forget his face. Asta mentions that Declan framed Frizen for a long list of crimes before having him executed. Chasing Frizen to stop that dark future was Asta's entire mission. Asta explains that he chased Frizen for so long he nearly lost his mind. Despite being the absolute best tracker in the world, he just could not find where the man was hiding. Asta admits that Frizen was a world-class runner, moving all over the entire planet. Asta searched every single corner of the world with bloody hands until he finally tracked Frizen all the way to the demonic realm. Asta dove into the demonic realm without a single hesitation. Monsters swarmed him from every side and the demonic energy began to eat away at his very soul. In the end, he still could not find Frizen, and he finally gave up. He eventually crawled out of that nightmare to find a troubleshooter already waiting there. The troubleshooter had news but was way too terrified to step inside the demonic realm. Instead, he just waited outside by himself until Asta finally crawled out to meet him. In the end, the news turned out to be about Frizen and the simple fact that he was already dead. Apparently, Declan caught him and squeezed out every single secret regarding forbidden magic and the artifact. Asta explains how hollow he felt, leading him to sit outside the demonic realm for days, just staring at the sky. You and I know he's lying, but Faren claims he's just a simple attendant who has no idea what Asta is saying. Asta completely ignores the lie as he notices the man is losing far too much blood. Asta quickly forces a healing potion down the man's throat, insisting that he cannot die yet because he still has to hear the end of this story. Deep down, Faren is desperately trying to find an escape route now that Asta has given him a fighting chance. Asta continues his story, recalling how he saw a wyvern soaring freely through the sky. In that moment, it finally dawned on him that he was just a hollow person who was venting his emotions. Because of that moment, he decided to erase all thoughts of revenge from his mind. Fate brings them together anyway. While Faren is busy cooking up a plan to escape, Asta lunges forward and slams his head directly into the hard ground. Asta looks terrifying as he reveals he researched every single detail about the demonic realm and these experiments just so he would be ready for this exact moment. Asta even documented exactly how all his comrades died. Now, he plans to recreate every single ounce of that pain on Fraren's own body. Faren realizes with pure terror that Asta is actually going to enjoy every second of this. 2 hours later, Jara finally enters the ground and screams at her attendants to find the students immediately. She is furious that an ancient spell stalled her for 2 hours while her students' lives were on the line. An assistant rushes over to report that the core is normal and all spells have been removed. Jara tells them to prioritize rescuing the students over catching the intruder. She forbids any public announcements because they have no idea how the mysterious intruder will react to the noise. Soon after, every single student is accounted for, leaving Jara completely baffled. She cannot believe the academy was under fire for over 2 hours without a single student casualty. Suddenly, Perun reaches out to Jara, confirming that he has successfully gained access to the internal control room. Trust me. You and I are going to be just as horrified as Jara when she sees those 2 mangled bodies lying in the room. Alright, you and I are jumping back into a moment where secrets are about to be blown wide open. Jara spins around and locks eyes with Asta. In that one look, she knows for sure he is hiding something dark. Suddenly, the headmaster appears on the scene, claiming he rushed there as fast as his old legs could carry him. Jara is stunned. The headmaster traveled from the eastern outskirts of the entire continent in record time. How is that even possible? The headmaster, however, just smiles. He is actually quite pleased with how Jara handled the aftermath of the mess. The headmaster is especially curious about the report Jara sent him, specifically the part claiming Asta was the one who dealt with the intruders so brutally. You see, every mage battles a heart demon. It is a dark shadow that can manifest without any warning at all, and most of the time, these heart demons lead to a very messy, very permanent end. Since he always followed orders in his past life as a troubleshooter, Asta never had this issue. However, watching his comrade die from forbidden magic made him truly furious. He chose to bury that rage deep inside. He thought it was gone, until he faced Faren in the trial corridor. That fight ripped open every single emotion he had been bottling up. Now pay attention here, Asta feels like a ticking time bomb is wired straight to his chest. A week has passed, and Asta decides it is finally time to begin mastering the Crimson Fire secret tome. In his past life, his mastery was limited to the non-attribute secret arts given to expendable troubleshooters like him. Learning an elemental secret art like Crimson Fire is a completely new challenge for our main character. That's why he makes sure to read the first stages over and over again. At the same time, he studies the ending to make sure everything feels exactly right. Even though the main mana circuits feel similar to his Heavenly Origin technique, there is a big catch. Just moving mana through these circuits only produces fire-expected energy. He needs more than just a spark. To succeed, he has to perfectly maintain the mental image of the flames within his mind. Asta activates the tome and begins absorbing the mana, igniting a flame in his heart that burns all the way through his hands. Once it manifests, he proceeds to compress the spell. He quickly realizes this elemental power takes a much heavier toll on his body than his usual neutral mana. He manages to absorb a fraction of it, feeling like he is finally one step closer to reaching Faren's level. He is satisfied. He's finally merged a fire attribute into his basic foundation. This is a massive power jump. Just as he is reflecting on his progress, he senses an overwhelming presence looming right outside the building. Trust me, this confrontation is one you and I definitely didn't see coming. Asta doesn't hesitate to step outside, only to find the legendary old dwarf and headmaster waiting for him. The old man admits he finally sees why Jara was suspicious. Asta's control over that fire mana was just too perfect. He admits Asta is on another level. Asta casually calls him principal, but the old man suggests he use the title headmaster instead. Suddenly, the headmaster detonates a massive wave of aura, making Asta wonder what the hell is actually going on. However, as a former troubleshooter, he has no business feeling any kind of fear. He manages to stand his ground, and the headmaster finally speaks out. He reminds Asta that as the highest authority in the academy, he deserves a bit more respect and a proper greeting. Asta immediately bows, shouting a loud and formal greeting to satisfy the old man's ego. The headmaster tells him to pipe down. Asta could shout at the top of his lungs and no one would come because the old man has already blocked out all surrounding sound. Asta is genuinely impressed by how sharp the old man really is. Asta was trying to draw a crowd for safety, but the headmaster was already 3 steps ahead of him. When Asta asks why he's here, the headmaster reveals he has a few very important questions to ask. Asta's answers will be the tipping point. With that, the powerful old man slowly takes a seat. His mere presence releases so much pressure that Asta is crushed to his knees. The headmaster reveals that Jara suspected he was hiding something, and now he wants to see it. Asta is completely floored by how powerful the headmaster really is. He can't believe this is the same man who couldn't even deliver a straight speech back at the Grand Hall. In this moment, Asta has no choice but to admit that the headmaster is a complete monster. Still, Asta doesn't think the man can compare to Declan. Focusing his intent, Asta finds a gap in the headmaster's mana flow and slices right through it. Now free from the oppressive pressure, Asta looks him in the eye and admits he knows this is about the trial corridor. The headmaster is shocked he's being so blunt, but Asta knows there is no point in lying anymore. And that's where we leave it. Secrets this big never stay buried for long. Alright, you and I are diving back into Asta's wild journey at the academy. Asta is completely thrown off by the headmaster's bipolar mood swings, flipping from serious to smiling instantly. The old man offers a deal. He will ask the questions, and Asta better answer them if he wants to avoid a beating. Since they have a deal, Asta takes a seat, ready to hear what the old man wants to say. But before the interrogation begins, Asta starts spinning a mysterious parable about predators. He describes a wyvern being hunted, which immediately hooks the headmaster's full attention. The headmaster treats this like a literal battlefield, demanding Asta show respect as his senior, or he'll end up getting knocked out cold. Asta gives a respectful bow and calls him senior, earning a rare compliment for his obedience. Suddenly, a terrifying aura explodes as the headmaster demands to know why the intruders were left in such a bloody and brutal state. Asta freezes, realizing the headmaster isn't actually mad at him, but at the bastards who broke in. Now pay attention, because you and I are about to find out exactly how the headmaster plans to crush the intruders and their sponsors. He promises Asta that the Emperor will give his full blessing to wipe these guys out. He plans to call in his old comrades, those legendary war mages and knights who once fought right by his side in the past. Asta realizes right then that these are definitely not your average soldiers. Asta tells the headmaster that everything traces right back to Declan, but the headmaster smells the lies. Asta is impressed by his sharp mind, even though pinning it all on Declan would have been easier. Asta finally reveals that Vimar is the real culprit, but when the headmaster asks if they are both from that family, Asta mentions Faren is a Magitech engineer. The old man asks for hard evidence, but Asta just smirks, asking if he needs to be spoon-fed every little detail. The headmaster is stunned by the kid's absolute lack of respect. He demands to know how Asta found out about Vimar and Faren, and Asta calmly explains the whole situation. He gives the best answers possible while carefully hiding any mention of his regression or the grimoire. Even through the talking, Asta can feel the pure rage radiating off the headmaster. Once he calms down, the headmaster mentions he heard Asta plans to build his own tower. He tells Asta he is willing to fill the entire first-floor shelves for him, leaving Asta thrilled and incredibly grateful for the headmaster's cooperation. But there is a catch. Asta only gets the admission ticket if he does one little favor. Trust me, you and I both know a favor from this guy is never simple. The headmaster sees Asta's worried face and tells him to lighten up already. The favor can wait, as he pivots to the artifact used for building the demonic realm. The headmaster warns it might be dangerous, but its spatial severance ability would be absolutely perfect for the library that Asta is planning to build. Asta can't argue with that. The artifact is just way too useful to ignore. Since even top professors couldn't crack it, it would be the ultimate defense for his tower. However, Asta admits he knows almost nothing about the world of Magitech, so the headmaster tells him he needs to go see Jara right away. He promises to put in a good word, since Jara is one of the few people he trusts. He warns Asta that Jara will definitely be curious about who he really is. They cook up a cover story for the academy, and the next day, Damien and Chenby suddenly show up while Asta is studying. Asta is floored by how much weight those two put on in just 1 week. He is also shocked to see the other students actually getting along with Damien and Chenby. Chenby explains that everyone is grateful for the bracelet info Asta shared during the trial corridor. They even scored free elixirs as gifts, and their parents are already helping out too. Asta brushes off the thanks, telling Chenby there is no need for gratitude because he was the one who actually stepped up to change the students' minds all on his own. Then Asta turns to ask what Damien was actually doing in the trial corridor. Apparently, Damien used plant magic to hijack a golem and named it Cerberus 1, 2, and 3, while putting them all to work in the corridor. But just as Chenbi sits down to finally have a real talk with Asta, Jara appears out of nowhere, ordering Asta to her office right this second, and then asks him if he knows exactly why he was summoned. Stick with me, things are about to get even more complicated for our main character. Alright, you and I are about to see just how deep the headmaster's web of lies really goes. She knows Vimar is the culprit, and Asta agrees, calling the whole group literal trash. Asta is actually impressed. The headmaster really did set the stage for his new identity perfectly. Instead of exposing himself as Blander, he is using a secret identity. The headmaster's plan is simple but brilliant. Asta will play the role of an old war mage's descendant who has been wandering the continent in secret, carrying a massive blood feud with the Declan family. And Asta is totally on board, because this lie fits his main goal perfectly. Draw knows there are holes in the story, but since the headmaster vouched for him, she won't probe any further. She promises to cover his tracks, realizing Asta isn't actually a threat to the Academy's peace. Suddenly, Asta kills the vibe by staring at her chest and telling her she's way too old. Jara gets heated but quickly calms down, convincing herself that he was just trying to give her a compliment. She praises Asta, knowing the only reason the students in the corridor survived was because of his power. Now watch this part carefully. This is where Asta starts building his real empire by asking for her support. Dra doesn't hesitate to join him, and Asta finally lets out a massive sigh of relief. That is 3 major academic ties officially locked in. Everything is going exactly as he planned. Jara shifts to the main point, the artifact. She warns him that researching this thing could take a very long time. There are risks, but she's not worried, because they can always just destroy the gauntlet if it goes haywire. Her real fear? The villains who will do anything to get their hands on that much power. She is talking about the forbidden magic union known as the Salvadium Cabal. Asta has never heard of them, so Dra explains they are a group of masters using forbidden magic. They all have different methods, but one shared goal to finally recreate the demonic realm in this world. She is certain Faren was working with them since he was the first to start making their dreams a reality. Since Faren is dead, she warns Asta that the Cabal will hunt him down to recover their lost artifact. Dra reveals they are persistent enough to even rival the House of Declan. She warns him that he might actually die, but just look at Asta's face. You and I can see he's getting more excited by the second. He isn't scared at all. The thought of finding these cultists and crushing them into the dirt brings him pure joy. Dra is stunned by the terrifying, and honestly dangerous, expression written across Asta's face right now. Asta pulls out the gauntlet and hands it over, telling Jara to start the research immediately. She agrees, but suddenly an assistant bursts into the room looking completely terrified. He reveals that the head of the Declan family, Faren, is here. The news hits like a physical blow, leaving Asta completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. The entire academy drops into full panic mode. The headmaster screams at everyone to prepare for a formal greeting. Students are sent back to their dorms while security across the school is tightened up instantly. The headmaster, Parn, and Dra stand ready at the gates to welcome Declan to the academy. This is the first time the headmaster will see the man who became a family head at age 30. Everyone knows Declan is a monster whose crimes only grew once he took power, but the headmaster knows he has to keep his cool for now. Still, he is furious. Declan is riding a horse straight into the academy like he owns the place. Usually, no matter how famous you are, you walk. But Declan clearly thinks rules don't apply to him. Declan pulls up and asks if it is time yet, leaving the headmaster completely confused by the cryptic question. He casually mentions that he heard all about the attack on the trial corridor. The headmaster fires back, telling him he is speaking about events that haven't even been confirmed yet. He is livid. He knows the Declan family is behind the attack, yet the man is acting totally clueless. Suddenly, Declan flashes a fake smile and says he is only here to offer his generous assistance. Declan unveils his pocket space, showing how he captured the attackers. Inside are the severed heads of the culprits, and he calmly mentions that Vimar was the one leading the entire operation. Declan brags about the clean job he did, wiping out Vimar and his entire family line. Asta watches the scene from a rooftop. He isn't surprised Declan killed Vimar, but the timing is very suspicious. Too perfect. Stick with me, this is getting wild. Asta realizes the only one he mentioned Vimar and Declan to was the headmaster. Yet Declan appears the very next morning. He is left wondering if this is just dumb luck, or if Declan is truly meticulous. Stick with me because Asta is finally getting a shot at Declan in this timeline, even if the guy is still way out of his league. Days later, the academy returns to its usual routine, but Faren left a little surprise behind from his last visit. He is planning to enroll a direct descendant of the Declan bloodline right into the academy as an undergraduate student. It is a classic hostage card move, the kind of power play only the most prestigious houses use. Right on cue, the Imperial House announces the enrollment of the third princess, almost as if they planned it together. That is a problem for next year, though. For now, the school kicks off the Pistoniki Festival to boost everyone's morale after the recent chaos. This festival is a massive victory celebration for students who were called into action during the Age of War. Asta realizes the Academy is treating the Trial Corridor event just like a real wartime deployment, which really lightens the mood. To make it even better, the Academy is allowing alcohol, giving everyone a taste of freedom. Even Damien is actually hyped about grabbing some drinks with the mercenaries tonight. Suddenly, an announcement blares out, letting all the students know the award ceremony is about to start. Everyone interested is headed to the Sage Hall. Damien is not feeling it, but Asta makes sure to drag him along anyway. Now pay attention because Asta is ready to finally collect his reward for all the heavy lifting he's done. Once the headmaster wraps up his long speech, they finally get into the actual award presentations. Names are called, and the recipients head to the stage. Dahlia is up first, followed by Damien, and then Evelyn. Chenbi and Asta round out the group. As they walk up, Asta cannot help but wonder what Evelyn actually did. He is genuinely curious about her, especially since he has no memory of her from his previous life either. Still, he figures she must have pulled off something significant during the trial court event to earn this spot. Finally, the moment comes for Asta to receive his own prize, and the headmaster personally hands him a top-grade elixir tucked inside a very expensive-looking box. After the ceremony, the group parties around the school until nightfall. Suddenly, a massive fireworks display lights up the sky, grabbing everyone's attention. Asta thinks it is a waste of money, but he secretly plans a bigger launch for his future library opening. He wants to stand at the top of the tower just to look down at the world. His grand plan is a week-long festival, capped off by an official Sage Ascension ceremony to mark his total success. Next morning, a white owl delivers a message from the headmaster. Asta is told to meet at their usual spot, so he dives right out of his window and heads straight for the meeting. The meeting point is an abandoned building that used to be a hangout for troubleshooters back in the day. That makes it the perfect spot in the entire academy for a little secret meeting. Asta steps inside and is actually shocked to see the headmaster has cleaned the place up to look quite nice. Once they settle in, Asta asks the old man why he was summoned here so incredibly early in the morning. The old man reminds him about that favor he owes. It finally clicks for Asta, this is the price for that library pass. The headmaster claims the favor is simple. He just wants Asta to deliver a letter to an old friend of his. You and I both know that look. Asta can already feel this isn't ending well. When Asta asks where he's going, the headmaster points toward the Hammer and Great Forest, where this friend is currently hiding out. Asta is floored. That forest is an ancient, untamed wilderness packed with high-level monsters and rare magical materials that could kill him in seconds. He cannot believe the headmaster is actually sending him to find someone in a death trap like that. The headmaster just teases him, saying it should be easy since there are actually other people living out there too. He tells him to just check a few base camps, and he'll definitely track the guy down eventually. Asta is sweating over the danger, and just as he's about to start complaining his head off, the headmaster cuts him off. He forgot to mention that he already prepared a little something for the trip. The headmaster slides a list over, and Asta is stunned. Everything on it is incredibly rare and costs a fortune to get. The old man asks if he had something to say. Asta immediately swallows his pride and says he is down for it. Let's be real, the rewards for this mission are just way too good for Asta to turn down. And just like that, Asta is swimming in loot, including an Ira workshop production voucher. Trust me, you and I are definitely going to want to see what happens next. You and I are looking at a production voucher from a legendary workshop so elite that even nobles have to wait in line. With rewards like that, there is no way Asta can turn down the headmaster's special proposal. The headmaster admits he already had a plan to bring this target person back to the academy. Between the Demon Realm threats and Declan's drama, it is finally time for the headmaster to call in a favor from his old comrade. But since the target claims he is busy with some personal business, the headmaster wants Asta to go over there and help the man settle his affairs once and for all. Asta manages to squeeze out even more compensation for the mission before finally walking out of the meeting. Now that it is over, Asta starts plotting his next move. He originally wanted to use the elixir for mana capacity, but since he has 3 now, he doesn't need to stay fixated on just that. Because things have changed, he decides to use a technique modeled after a Knight's Ether reinforced body, a powerful method known throughout the land as Monolith. This legendary technique will allow someone like Asta to finally surpass the limits he had as a troubleshooter in his past life. Asta is honestly relieved that he is about to finally upgrade this frail, weak body of his. He is absolutely hyped to be a mage who also packs Knight-level physical abilities, so he wastes no time and starts absorbing the top-grade elixir. Using his usual breathing technique, he pours every single drop of the elixir's mana directly into his physical frame. This force soaks deep into every joint, muscle fiber, and nerve cell he owns. Within a minute of ingestion, Asta's body starts burning up thanks to the power of the firebrand. Stick with me here, because he is pushing past the first limit by circulating mana through his flesh instead of his circuits. Next, he forced the mana directly into his muscle fibers. This pushes his body to the absolute limit, causing pain so intense he feels like he is being ripped apart. Even when he wants to stop, he grinds through every last bit of energy until the finish line, finally succeeding in mastering the powerful Monolith technique. Honestly, he thinks he might have even exceeded his own high expectations. Although his durability can't quite handle the full output yet, he is very confident his reinforced flesh won't let him lose to any knight, and he'll be a massive problem for them once his body reaches its full maturity stage. Asta decides to test out his body's new regeneration. He cuts himself, expecting the wound to take 15 minutes to heal, just like it did back in his past life. You and I are seeing this, right? The injury closes instantly, giving him a legendary troll-level regeneration factor. Asta is stunned by this bonus, realizing that combining this with the healing light tome from Wuji would make him as invincible as Damien, the monster of Blandor. That's when he notices a tiny trace of mana inside the droplet of blood he spilled on the floor. He tries to control it, and surprisingly, it glows with a bright light, proving his blood reacts directly to mana. He realizes that the Blandor family's secret healing art will be incredibly useful if he can just master it correctly. Apparently, there is a formula for regenerating flesh and blood in the tome, and Asta actually considers talking to Wuji about it for a second. But he quickly kills that idea because he wants absolutely nothing to do with that guy ever again. Asta decides he's going to talk to Lancey about it instead, especially since she's coming over for a parent consultation very soon. Lancey arrives shortly after, relieved that Asta and Damon are both safe. She asks if there are any issues, but Damon assures her he is fine. Lancey then mentions that Gamo has a message regarding the Blandor inner lake construction and the statue design Damon proposed recently. Lancey admits the proposal was super detailed, but unfortunately, Gamo hasn't approved it yet. This crushes Damon's excitement, but Lancey tells him there is still one chance to fix things. If Damon can rank in the top 16 during the Academy midterms, she will have the leverage needed to convince Gamo. Asta immediately sees through Lancey's little game the moment those words leave her mouth. Lancey tells Damon not to worry, since he has both Asta and Chenbi around to help him out. She promises the two of them a massive reward if they can successfully help Damon reach his goal. Asta realizes he is being pushed into a corner, but he has to play along because he needs that proliferation formula, and Lancey is his only way out. With that settled, Asta promises Lancey that he will help them. Trust me, you and I are definitely going to want to see how Damon handles the basics of magic, since he currently looks like he has zero idea what is happening. Alright, you and I are diving into a mess where a student pulls out a box overflowing with every book he owns. Chenbi cannot believe his eyes, and he immediately realizes they are both about to head straight into a nightmare. Chenbi asks if he submitted the teacher's assignments on time, and luckily for their sanity, Damien says yes he did. Chenbi sighs in relief since they just dodged a bullet. However, Asta is watching closely and isn't so sure Damien is being honest. When Asta takes a look at Damien's current grades, he realizes the kid is failing almost every subject except culture. That is a small win, thanks to the elite education his family forced on him. The real disaster is magic class. Asta is not even sure if he can get through tutoring him without wanting to throw a punch or two. They are right in the middle of this when Faren appears, claiming he overheard their plan to help Damien study. Asta asks why he is even here, and Faren reveals that he actually has a major solution. Damien's face immediately lights up with hope after hearing that, but Asta is not buying it. Faren can see the distrust, so pay attention here, because he is about to show them something truly and absolutely insane. Faren whips out a sheet that Asta recognizes right away. It is a complete breakdown of every recent exam at the Academy, including the secret patterns used by every single professor on the entire campus. Everything from the first to third year is summarized on these sheets, leaving Chenbi absolutely blown away by the discovery. Asta, though, still has not forgotten the shady stunt Faren pulled back at the trial corridor. But looking at these notes, he admits there is at least a ray of hope. Even though he really wants to deck the guy, Asta decides to hold back for now. Suddenly Faren mentions a condition. Asta realizes he might not have to wait very long before finally putting his fist right through the guy's face. The catch? Faren needs Asta to back him up in the post-midterm combat trials, because he believes Asta's insane skills are his only real ticket to passing them. Asta wastes zero time and accepts the deal instantly. He even tells Faren they can head to the gym right now because he is itching for an excuse to fight. Faren panics and clarifies the help is not for him but someone else. Suddenly, Asta's mood takes a total 180 turn. Faren leads the way to meet this mystery person, and soon, the two of them are heading far outside the Academy grounds. After winding through countless alleyways, Asta's patience is wearing thin until they finally arrive at a hidden private training center. Just by looking around, Asta can tell whoever he is supposed to train has some serious money in their pockets. You and I saw this coming, right? Asta finally meets his new student, and it is none other than Dahlia Day herself. Faren pulls Dahlia aside, asking if she is really sure about Asta. She makes it clear it's him or nobody she has done, relying on family favors and money. Dahlia literally begs Asta for his help, but our main character has a different plan in mind. Asta suggests that Dahlia should use Furion as her trainer instead. He is too busy giving Damien private lessons, so he tells her to use Furion until the final exams are over. Furion is completely stunned, and he is even more shocked seeing Dahlia actually consider the offer for a split second. He screams at Asta, reminding him that the exam sheets were supposed to be the full price for his help. Asta fires back that the sheets only covered one debt. He still has not paid for what he did to Chenbi earlier. Furion is speechless after getting caught in that logic trap. Then Dahlia speaks up, telling Asta she is totally fine with his suggestion. Furion loses it, protesting that they cannot just decide his fate when he has not even agreed to any of this. He brags about his noble family blood, but Asta just teases him, telling him that since he needs a punching bag right now, Furion will do just fine for that role. Furion's pride is shattered. With no other choice, he storms off, claiming he has his own exams to get ready for. Asta breathes a sigh of relief. At least now, Chenbi might actually be able to relax a little. He tells Dahlia he will keep his end of the bargain, since he already got what he wanted from Furion. Asta asks if she is ready for some intense one-on-one combat training, but she just stands there, completely overwhelmed by everything. Meanwhile, Eve is meeting a shady associate. It looks like she is planning to have someone steal the exam questions just for her. She hands over an address, directing him to a specialist who is an absolute pro at these kinds of heists. Back with Asta, he still cannot believe he is training Dahlia. In their past lives, these two were constantly at each other's throats and had some serious beef. Trust me, you and I know Asta would have killed her long ago if the reinforcements hadn't saved her. Alright, you and I are starting where she becomes Chief Mage, and she and Asta never cross paths again. Still, Asta realizes that if he drops the grudge, raising Dahlia to be a powerhouse would be a huge payoff. Suddenly, Dahlia suppresses Declan, which gets Asta hyped enough to wonder if he should speed up the timeline a bit. Asta is thankful he took the deal, because if he didn't beat some sense into her now, he'd never get another chance. He then grills her on what she thinks is the single most important thing when it comes to one-on-one combat. Dahlia has no clue, but she's desperate to learn the movement Asta used against Exter. He's totally shocked she's obsessed with his style, but he tells her that she has to find a fighting method that actually suits her. He asks her to imagine a duel between a rank 8 mage and a rank 9. Who do you think wins? Dahlia picks the higher rank, but Asta shuts her down. In a real fight, whoever cracks the other's head first wins. Asta demonstrates with a practical example by firing a mono bullet at Dahlia's head, proving whoever hits first wins. By the time Asta starts heading back to the academy, it is late, but we both know Dahlia only improves if she gets beat up more often. Stick with me. Then he remembers Damon is still in the picture. Meanwhile, Evelyn's lackey is stressing out over the high-stakes mission she gave him. He realizes Evelyn is using these contracts to buy influence with noble families, and if he plays his cards right, he will be in. He might just become part of that elite network, too. He remembers how everything went to hell last time, but he's convinced that this time around, things are going to be different. He soon arrives at his destination, which looks like a totally normal, everyday tea house. The waiter asks for his order, so he leans in and drops the secret code phrase, "Freeze the dragonhorn tea hot." The attendant tells him to wait just one moment. The guy breathes a massive sigh of relief, knowing it would have been incredibly awkward if he had said that code in a regular shop. The attendant sees that the guy is shaking, explaining that most people expect a dark merchant's hideout to be a secret, grimy hole in the wall, not a shop. However, nobody would ever suspect a bright and beautiful place like this of being a criminal black market. Asked for his business, the lackey reveals he is there to buy the exam papers for the academy's basic first-year class. The attendant mentions someone is willing to sell the academy's papers and asks which department he is looking for. He wants magic, and it turns out he's lucky. He is scheduled to meet the seller next weekend. He asks the lackey if he wants to join the meeting. The lackey realizes the attendant is trying to rile him up, pushing him to see if he will break under pressure. Still, he agrees to go, playing it cool like a real merchant, verifying the goods and the seller's quality. Deep down, the dude knows that there is absolutely no place left to retreat to. The attendant is thrilled with the answer and promises to relay the specific time and place later, warning him to never write the information down. While he talks, you and I know Asta is listening to everything from outside. Asta doesn't buy this coincidence. An exam paper seller and buyer just happen to show up at the exact same time? He realizes just how messed up this is, noting that not one person has even mentioned the price. He decides to check out the meeting for himself. And since he still has some Declan clothes that fit the role, it's showtime. He reaches into his subspace and pulls out the outfit, ready for action. He wonders if he should start by robbing the richest guy on the block. Meanwhile, the attendant is contemplating his dangerous job right as Asta walks into the tea house dressed in the Declan gear. The guy is shocked to his bones, never expecting one of Declan's elite mage units to appear in his shop. Asta tells him to cut the act and ignore the code. The man immediately falls in line, asking what he is looking for. Asta replies that he's looking for a subspace pouch. The guy starts sweating bullets when he hears that, terrified that Asta is hunting for Callahan's legendary subspace pouch which vanished after his death. Worried about why Asta is looking at their store, he quickly swears they've never seen such an item there before. Asta then asks him about his conversation with the suspicious boy who just left the tea house. And that's where we leave it. What do you and I think he'll do next? Let's dive in. Asta shows him exactly how dangerous he can be by letting a terrifying aura erupt from his body when the man takes too long. Fear grips the attendant instantly. He realizes right then and there that he is not dealing with some ordinary Declan Mage. He folds immediately, promising to confess everything he discussed with the boy. He swears it has absolutely nothing to do with Declan. Asta says he is ready to listen, but he will be the one to decide if there is actually nothing left to hide. Right as the man starts to speak, Asta cuts him off, demanding a full confession. On the way to the warehouse, the man nervously asks why they are going there. Asta just tells him he needs to check the place personally. Asta stares deep into his eyes, making him even more anxious. He asks if he is hiding something, just to pressure him into total agreement. Descending into the basement, the attendant asks if they really need to take things this far, and Asta assures him there is nothing to fear if he is truly innocent, even swearing it on the name of Declan. He promises that whatever is confessed will remain a secret forever, as long as it does not involve the interests of Declan. The attendant finally reveals that the boy was acting under Evelyn's direct instructions. He admits he only cares about money, and lacks the exact details, but he suspects she is definitely trying to buy Academy papers on the black market. Asta is totally stunned. Evelyn is the star of the Academy, always seen as a role model because of her supposedly perfect moral compass. Let's pause. Why would the Academy's golden girl be involved in something this dirty? Asta cannot believe he is stuck working as a tutor, while she has the luxury to just buy whatever she wants. Arriving at the warehouse, Asta sees it is packed with a variety of high-quality items. He tells the attendant that things look fine at a glance, but he still needs to verify everything to be sure. Asta orders him to prepare 2 subspace pouches, so they can seize any items that look even slightly suspicious. The attendant freezes in pure terror. He knows he is finally done for. Meanwhile, Chenbi is really struggling to teach Damien, who keeps arguing that his own method is better simply because the spell technically works. But Chenbi has to explain that following the stabilization formula is actually pretty important. Furion wants to scream in frustration. He realizes he has entered a completely different kind of hell. He knows Damien is a genius, but he is the type who has absolutely no idea how to use common sense. Nothing Damien does makes sense. Even when a spell is not supposed to work, he somehow finds a way to easily manifest it. It leaves him wondering what would happen if Asta actually took the time to teach Dahlia properly. Just then, Dahlia shows up on the scene, and Furion nearly loses his mind when he realizes Asta beat her up for training. A week flies by. Chenbi asks Furion about the grading, noting that every single part he checked is indeed correct. Furion confirms that it is the exact same story with the section he was grading, too. Even Damien is shocked to hear that he managed to get every single answer right. Now pay attention, because Damien just exceeded every single expectation in a week. Furion is overwhelmed, hoping Asta is doing well. Meanwhile, Asta is watching Evelyn's lackey, Debit. Though he is itching to beat him senseless, he knows he has to wait until the man meets with the seller. He considers ruining everything for Debit and Evelyn right then, but he knows other buyers would just snatch up those exam papers. Moments later, Debit arrives at the meeting spot and has to clear his way past a large bouncer. Later that night, Debit brings the materials to Evelyn's chambers, and they confirm they finally have the real deal. Evelyn tells her mysterious assistant that they are going to keep giving Debit more opportunities from now on. When Debit hears this, he smiles. He truly believes that his family will finally stop ignoring him. Evelyn tells Debit that he is dismissed for now, promising to reach out again once they have fully confirmed that everything they bought is intact. She adds that moving forward, Debit will handle distributing the exam papers to their clients, and he happily agrees. Once he leaves, Evelyn smiles with pure satisfaction while mocking Debit for being such a massive idiot. She asks her assistant if his task is going smoothly. He confirms that in just a few days, everything will be ready. Every job Evelyn was linked to will be replaced with Debit's name and the Pingroove Trading Company. Evelyn tells him to make sure it goes perfectly, since taking the fall is the only reason they are using Debit. And that is where we leave it. Trust me, you and I are going to enjoy seeing her fall after Asta heard everything. Alright, stick with me. Asta is currently wondering if there is any way to handle this mess while guiding Evelyn to make sure she never pulls a stunt like this again. Even though he recorded the entire thing with a crystal orb, Asta knows it would be a total waste to use that trump card right now. Asta is stuck in a weird spot. He is used to just smashing things to pieces, but he knows he cannot take that route with this delicate situation. Suddenly, a brilliant idea hits him. This is exactly how he is going to guide Evelyn down the right path for good. Asta reaches for the exam papers and immediately starts copying everything onto a brand new sheet of paper. He is actually impressed by his own handwriting, mostly because he practiced forging scripts a lot when he was a kid. Asta never expected to use those old skills for something like this, but he is feeling pretty proud of himself for getting it done. Once the copying is finished, he lets Evelyn know that her days of being a villain are officially over. Meanwhile, Dahlia has finally realized what Asta was trying to teach her about the importance of landing that very first strike. Before long, the exams officially come to an end, and every student is left wondering if they actually wrote down the right answers. One specific student, Demon von Haramar, who also happens to be Evelyn's main client, and is feeling incredibly good about his performance, even boasting to his classmates about how he absolutely crushed every single question on the test. See, Demon is the eldest son of Viscount Haramar, and his powerful family controls the kingdom's massive grain storage warehouses. Evelyn is thrilled that she secured such a profitable partnership with the cereal field heirs, all thanks to those leaked exam questions. In fact, she has 4 other deals just like this one, running at the exact same time. Now pay attention, Evelyn thinks this is the deal of the century, and she is fully confident that the easy money will just keep rolling in. Suddenly, an examiner walks in and tells Demon to follow him because the academy director is waiting for him right now. Pure terror grips Evelyn the second she hears this news, because she knows this can only mean one thing. The very next morning, the students are ordered to gather in the grand hall for an emergency meeting that no one saw coming. The students are completely baffled. The innocent ones have no clue why they are being summoned out of the blue like this. However, some are hearing rumors of a massive cheating scandal. Evelyn is standing there shaking like a leaf, terrified that the trail might lead straight back to her. She tries to stay confident, telling herself that she didn't leave a single trace behind. She briefly wonders if D-Bay messed up, but she quickly dismisses the thought. He might be slow, but he is definitely not that reckless. The examiner soon enters the room and demands that everyone keep their mouths shut immediately. He admits that rumors are already flying, but he is here to clarify exactly what happened for those who are still in the dark. The examiner reveals that several students were caught red-handed cheating during the first-year midterm exams. He goes on about how shameful it is for such a pathetic scandal to happen at their prestigious academy. This immediately confirms the worst fears for anyone who already suspected that something shady was going on. The innocent students know the cheaters are finished, and Evelyn is already practically ruining her own clothes out of pure fear. You and I saw this coming, the examiner says. The main instigator is D-Bay, who has been expelled along with 4 other accomplices. The examiner continues, explaining that the faculty didn't even uncover this plot themselves. It was actually a student with an unwavering sense of justice. He informs the entire crowd that they are here to honor the courage of that student. Then, he calls Evelyn's name and tells her to step forward. Evelyn is completely stunned when she hears her own name, while the other students start cheering for her. She tries to tell them it wasn't her, but they just think she is being modest and won't even give her a chance to explain. Suddenly, she is being shoved to the front as the hero who saved the day. Evelyn is totally lost. Her spirit is reeling because she knows exactly how wrong this whole situation is. Meanwhile, Asta is in the back clapping for her. He is urging her to stay on the right path now that she is known as a hero. She has basically become the benevolent judge who corrects the corrupt. 1 week later, the rankings are officially posted. The students all rush over to the bulletin board to check their final results. Damon and his friends are absolutely blown away when they see him in 18th place, which is way better than they expected. Asta maintains his cold attitude, telling Damien to look closer because Demon is ranked 7th, which is actually much higher than him. Just then, an examiner shows up and announces they posted the wrong results. He heads to the board and plasters up the real list. This time around, Damon moves up to 16th place, and he almost loses his mind with happiness. Asta is just glad Damien passed. Now, he can finally collect his real reward, the multiplication formula. Trust me, it was worth it. Alright, stick with me as we dive into a win that might just change Chenbi's entire future career. He suggests staying after graduation to work as an assistant. Asta hears this and tells him to shut his mouth. Asta didn't want to snap, but he only spoke up because he cares so much about Chenbi. He warns Chenbi that a previous assistant was actually involved in that massive cheating incident. The guy was so broke he had no choice but to sell answer sheets just to pay his bills. Asta asks if he knows how long it takes to become a professor. Chenbi says 3 to 4 years. When Asta asks who told him that, Chenbi reveals the source was none other than Pun. Asta asks if he genuinely wants to teach. Chenbi admits the work seems rewarding in its own way. Chenbi wonders if he's not cut out for it, but Asta says there's another way to reach his dream. He tells him to become an archmage, someone so powerful that nobody would ever dare to challenge them. With a confident smile, Asta explains that once he reaches the rank of archmage, he can train students however he wants, just like he did with Damien. This hits Chenbi pretty deep. This is exactly what Asta was aiming for. He's pushing his friend to dream much bigger. After seeing him handle Damien, Asta knows being a mere assistant would be a waste of his talent. Asta wants Chenbi to reach the top, so he can finally repay him for saving his life. Now pay attention, because elsewhere, two mysterious figures are meeting about discovered ruins in Hamlin Forest. This discovery looks like a massive deal. A few days later, the trio meets Lancansey for their reward. She reassures them that the specific multiplication formula they requested isn't actually that difficult. In fact, she promises Asta a high-tier formula. He's stunned since he never expected something so rare. Then, Lance turns to Chenbi. She reveals she did some digging into his family's current situation. She asks if he's aware of the trouble. Chenbi admits he knows, but things are only getting worse. Lance mentions that House Blander could fix everything and provide his family with a much better life. Chenbi doesn't need much time to think before giving her a straight answer. He thanks her but declines. Lance warns him not to be rude, but Chenbi clarifies his intentions. He lets her know that his only real wish is to stay friends with Damien forever. Hearing such a sincere declaration makes Damon turn a little red and blush. Lancansey is impressed. Chenbi asks if he can request something else instead, and she says, go ahead. He asks to study magic at House Blander one day because he wants to broaden his horizons. Lancansey asks if that's really enough. Gamu is just overjoyed that her son found a reliable friend. She decides to reward him. A letter arrives informing Chenbi that House Blander is now his patron house. You and I both saw his potential, but Chenbi almost passes out from shock reading that letter. Finally, the midterm evaluations concluded with results that left everyone feeling satisfied. Soon after, JRA informs the students they'll start interpersonal combat training, specifically for the first-year basic class. Regular lessons are suspended. From now on, every single class will focus entirely on practical combat. However, she explains that the actual training will be left entirely up to the students' own discretion. Preparation classes will still happen as scheduled, but she makes it clear that attendance isn't mandatory. One of the students speaks up, asking JRA what she actually means by their own discretion. She clarifies they're free to skip class. In fact, they can even return home to train. She tells them not to worry. Professors will handle everything, and they've invited some heavy hitters. A large number of active combat mages, certified at grade 5, will be coming from the Imperial Court. After the announcement, Asta is suspicious. Why did the combat schedule suddenly change like this? He figures the professors are hiding something. This decision definitely came from someone much higher up. Later that evening, Asta receives a message from the headmaster. He wants to meet at 8 p.m. Asta heads to their usual meeting spot, but he's completely shocked to find everything has changed. Stick with me, the headmaster even set up high-level barriers just to keep the warehouse hidden. You and I are about to watch our main character go completely rogue here. Asta realizes he can finally test that new multiplication formula he just mastered. He pulls out the ruby and starts infusing it with power. Against all odds, it works. The rubies absorb the surrounding mana and create a flawless copy of the original. But it's not enough power yet. He's prepping for a massive blast when the headmaster suddenly barges in, demanding answers. Asta is caught off guard, but the headmaster? He's completely fixated on those glowing rubies sitting right there. When asked if he can actually cast magic with them, Asta just shows him. The result leaves the old dwarf speechless. He can't believe Asta can store raw, unrefined mana inside stones, and then fire off high-level spells like that. He's yelling about the effective range 1 second, then demanding to know where Asta found such rare items the next. Asta promises to explain everything, but first, he needs a small favor from the old man. In reality, Asta just found the perfect target to test his brand new abilities on. The headmaster scoffs, claiming Asta couldn't touch a single hair on his head no matter how much magic he throws around. Without a word, Asta gets to work. He begins merging the rubies together, stacking mana until the pressure becomes unbearable. The headmaster finally sees the danger and starts screaming for him to stop, but Asta isn't backing down now. Watch this. Asta finally lets the skill rip, triggering a massive explosion that even he thinks was actually a little bit weak. When the smoke finally clears, we see the headmaster standing there, completely losing his mind. He roars at Asta, demanding to know who he really is and where he came from. He admits he knew Asta had pure mana, but what just happened right now defies every law of magic he's ever understood. Asta just shrugs, claiming he's a totally regular guy. He even asks if the old man thinks some great demon has possessed him. The headmaster snaps that their definitions of ordinary are light years apart at this point. He jokes about beating him up just to fix his perspective, admitting he still can't grasp the principle behind that strange magic. He asks where the red rubies vanished to, but instead of giving an actual answer, Asta just flips him off. Once they finally calm down, Asta asks the real question. Why did the old man summon him? It is about the Great Forest. But before saying a word, the headmaster activates a crystal orb on the table to show him exactly why he called. Now, you and I see why Asta's face turns pale with pure, unadulterated shock at the image. This is the Great Forest of Hamlin. It's an ancient, untouched land filled with lethal monsters, where only the most adaptable humans can survive. It is a place beyond human laws. Usually, only the most elite mercenaries can even set foot inside. But in this vision, Asta sees those same legendary warriors trembling in absolute terror. They're facing the undead, but not the mindless kind. These are soul-driven, self-born horrors that shouldn't even exist in this world. They move by raw spirit, not memories. The headmaster reveals that a monster known as the Destroyer has broken free from its seal in the ancient ruins. Now, an army of vengeful spirits is crawling up from the depths behind it. It's a crisis, but none of the headmaster's top disciples can leave on such short notice. He explains that they need to move out within 2 days, or it'll be too late. He asks Asta what he thinks while promising that even if he refuses the mission, he's not taking back the reward he already gave. Consider it a gift for the next generation. There won't be any extra gold for this one. The old man makes it clear. Everything depends on Asta's will. You can't bribe someone into a mission where their life is on the line. He's still warning Asta to be careful when Asta cuts him off, saying he is in. The headmaster is stunned. Asta knows he's worried about his friend, who would clearly die before turning back from that forest. He sees the weight of it all. Asta admits he's no saint, but he's also not the kind of trash who's going to bargain with another person's life. Deep down, Asta would have gone even if he was forbidden. He believes what he needs to learn lies deep in that forest, and there is no way he's missing this chance. With the deal sealed, the headmaster hands over a teleport ticket, telling him to show it to the officials for immediate passage. He also gives him a protective artifact cloak. Trust me, you and I are about to find out if Asta's new gear is enough to survive that deadly forest. Alright, you and I are about to watch him be told to shut up and prepare for what is coming. Finally, he hands him a mask, the sock wall mark, to hide his identity and ensure he won't be easily recognized on this mission. The old man explains that with this mask, his companion will never lose track of him or let him go unnoticed. The headmaster then explains that because of the recent battles and his top scores during the final exam, everything will be registered under his own name, but he still needs to know Asta's real deal with the House of Blander. Asta tells him not to sweat the details, promising that he will handle that noble family on his own. He sends a quick letter to Chenbi and Damien, letting them know he's leaving for training and they shouldn't bother looking. Instead of throwing a fit, Damien decides it's time he trains harder too. Later, at Greentown, a city right on the edge of the forest of Hamlin, Asta sits alone in a warehouse, planning his next move. Meanwhile, the headmaster's close friend, Oberon, meets up with a local guide named Ray, who is supposed to lead him through the woods. Ray acts terrified of the forest, but Oberon reminds him they have a strict escort contract between the 4th base camp and Greentown. Now watch this. Ray was paid a 4-fold advance for the risk, but he is still trying to cancel his contract. Ray mocks Oberon, claiming there is no way he will find another guide to help him at this late hour. He plays the victim, crying about his own life and how monsters could jump out of the shadows at any given second. Deep down, Ray is just trying to squeeze more cash out of Oberon because he has zero intention of actually entering that dangerous forest. His real plan is to ditch Oberon, take the money, and disappear to some quiet village to live like a king. Just then, Asta appears in the room with his face hidden behind that mysterious mask. The two of them freak out and ask who he is, but Asta just turns the tables and demands that Oberon identify himself first. Once he confirms his name, Asta reveals he is the headmaster's top student. Realizing he is in the right spot, Asta coolly tells Oberon that he is officially free to call him his senior. When Ray sees a subordinate arrive, he tries to play it smart, telling Oberon to just take the map and find their own way through the trees. He makes it sound like the map is the most valuable thing in the world. The unsuspecting Oberon agrees, thinking he and Asta can probably find a way to manage the dangerous trek on their own. Ray thanks him and starts to walk away with a smug grin, but Asta immediately orders him to stop right there. He uses a terrifying voice, warning Ray that he has exactly 1 second to sit back down. You and I saw this coming since his 1 second is finally up. Asta descends on him and pummels him just like a drum. Oberon watches in total shock as Asta levels the guy, wondering if they actually have a shot at defeating the legendary destroyer. Somewhere else, those two mysterious men are seen meeting up again. They are at a strange location trying to break an ancient seal, but the process is moving way slower than they originally planned. They are shocked the beast has not woken up yet, even though its deadly aura is already choking the air. Knowing Asta is heading for the destroyer in the forest, one of them decides to intercept him while the other continues breaking the seal. Solon asks his partner Kellogg if he can really handle Asta, and Kellogg just brags about all the high-level mages he has already killed. To him, a kid like Asta isn't even worth a second thought. Back in the woods, the group is finally moving deep into the forest with a very bruised Ray leading the way. Oberon is just relieved that things are back on track now that Asta has stepped in to save the day. Since Asta's face is totally covered, Oberon can't tell his age, but judging by his height, he figures they are about the same. It turns out Asta's nickname is the New Moon, a title given to someone who always provides easy solutions to the toughest problems. Asta then asks the guide if he wants to hand over that massive backpack so he can store it in his subspace, since it looks incredibly heavy. Ray quickly refuses, claiming the pack has vital emergency supplies he might need in a flash, so it is safer if he just carries it. Asta instantly knows Ray hasn't given up on his plan to rob them, but for now, they keep moving deeper into the woods. A few moments later, Ray senses something fast approaching their position, and he yells for Oberon to watch out. Suddenly, orcs mounted on giant wolves come charging toward them at high speed. Ray loses his mind because they are nowhere near the second base camp, which is supposed to be the only orc territory. Oberon completely freezes in terror, but then, glowing red rubies suddenly begin to fill the air. Right before launching his strike, Asta tells Oberon to raise a shield. The second those orcs are in range, Asta lets loose. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see exactly how this devastating attack shatters their entire front line. Alright, you and I are about to witness a massive explosion from that attack, forcing everyone to shield their eyes as it leaves behind nothing but pure destruction. When Ray sees just how powerful Asta really is, he finally accepts using his subspace because he knows there is no escape. Asta just nods, telling him he is free to use it. As they travel, they encounter jacked goblins that Asta easily one-shots with zero effort. Asta is shocked by their appearance, wondering if the destroyer mutated them, so Ray suggests he take a much closer look. After a quick observation, Ray identifies them as Kenti goblins hailing from the second base camp. But the fact they are out here means they are either expanding or something terrifying is chasing them. Asta says it is obvious they are being hunted. Just look at their claws, which are covered in dust and tree bark, and their feet, which are completely shredded from the run. Everything points to one terrifying fact: they were running for their lives from something far worse. Ray suggests taking a safer detour because these goblins hunt in packs and usually rule the food chain here. Ray knows whatever scared them is no joke, so he tells Asta they should avoid unknown variables if possible. Surprisingly, Asta agrees, noting that unexpected risks are the absolute worst, so they will do it Ray's way. Now, pay attention here. Ray's sharp senses are actually impressive enough to surprise Asta himself, despite all the interference. Ray manages to find the optimal route to avoid danger, and Asta admits the guy is more competent than he thought. He decides to follow Ray's lead for the time being. Soon after, Ray tells the group they are almost there, because once they cross the swamp in front of them, they will reach the first base camp. He urges them to rest while he scouts the area before the crossing. Asta can sense Oberon's nerves, and he doesn't blame him since that detour cost them a full day. Oberon tells Asta they have zero time to waste because the monster is definitely coming for them. He insists they must find the destroyer fast and kill it before things get completely out of control. The man blames himself for the disaster, but instead of offering any kind of sympathy, Asta shuts him down, since he's not a psychiatrist. Suddenly, Ray shows up with pure fear written all over his face. He tells the two they have to run immediately because the ruler of the swamp is coming. It turns out deep inside the forest lies a hellish place, simply known as the Depths. The swamp ruler is a primeval creature from that place, though no one knows why it moved to the swamplands. Ray complains about how bad it is that the ruler has appeared now after so many years. Asta asks if they can just avoid the wetlands and cross elsewhere, even if the king's domain is massive. But trust me, it's not that simple the moment you touch that water. The monster tracks your scent forever. Oberon asks Ray how long it would take them if they decided to take another route. Ray explains it isn't easy because they would need to take a massive detour. This is exactly why guides work so hard to secure a direct route through these dangerous wetlands. If they turn back now, Ray reveals it will take them at least 10 days to bypass. In the worst case, it could take a month. Oberon is shocked, but realizes safety might require it. Ray offers to prepare the long route, but Asta steps in, declaring they are going straight through. Ray is stunned and tries to explain the danger, as this monster has killed countless soldiers and knights. Asta tells Ray he has it all wrong. They aren't just passing through, they're going to kill the ruler. Ray realizes Asta is dead serious and can only sigh in pure frustration. Oberon tells Asta he shouldn't go to such lengths, already thankful they even came this far. Asta cuts him off, insisting that something has to be done about this monster right now. He asks if Oberon will just freeze when they face the destroyer. Oberon tries to make an excuse, but Asta has already decided the ruler of the swamp dies tomorrow. Seeing Asta won't budge, Oberon tells him there might be a way for him to actually assist. Asta snarks back, asking if he was planning to just stand on the sidelines before. Oberon reveals his hidden talent isn't fully awakened, but this gift, which he calls Overclock, is something you and I will definitely want to see. Alright, you and I are looking at a power that pushes hidden potential to its absolute utmost limit. Asta is instantly hooked and demands Oberon give him all the details on how it functions. The next morning, Oberon gets up early to prepare for the mission, and he's shocked to see Asta approaching while dragging a beaten-up Ray behind him. Asta caught him trying to slip away and decided a little physical correction was necessary. Asta even asks which tree Ray prefers, so he can tie him up for the local monsters the next time he tries to escape. One look at Asta's face tells Ray everything escaping is officially off the table from now on. After breakfast, with Asta feeling prime, he checks if Oberyn is ready to pull the trigger on the plan. Ray is definitely not ready, so Asta tells them both to stay back while he handles business with the beast. He heads into the swamp, knowing the second he steps into that territory, the monster's tracking will begin. To really get its attention, he slices his hand and drips fresh blood into the murky swamp water. And here is where we see the true scale of this thing. A massive whirlpool births a titan that stands incredibly high above our hero. While Oberyn and Ray shake with fear, Asta remains completely steadfast. Asta casually tells Oberyn to go ahead with his part, and the healer unleashes his skill on Asta to unlock his true hidden potential. Asta feels the raw power surging through his body, finally getting a taste of that absolute freedom he's been missing for so long. The monster tries to snatch him up, but Asta is already airborne, claiming the ultimate height advantage over the massive swamp beast. Asta actually thanks the creature he's been looking for a reason to really test his new limits today. While explaining how the overclock power functions, Oberyn admits he doesn't fully understand it, but it is said to shatter every possible limit of a fighter's potential. But he makes one thing very clear: there's one rule Asta absolutely cannot break during this fight. Overclock only lasts 5 minutes, and anything beyond that is dangerous, so he has to finish the fight fast. Now that Asta is standing face to face with this massive swamp monster, you and I have to love his confidence. He thinks 5 minutes is plenty of time for some fun. He ignites fire magic so intense it keeps burning even while submerged deep in the murky swamp water. Oberyn and Ray can't believe their eyes. Fire that doesn't care about water? That is absolutely insane. Ray realizes the monster is actually backing down. Asta might actually be able to kill this legend. Suddenly, Ray spots a dangerous tell and screams for Asta to watch out for the incoming roar. Before the warning even lands, the beast roars and Asta's fire magic begins to vanish. Asta realizes that the roar is actually a frequency designed to disrupt the natural flow of mana. He's not even surprised. He didn't expect anything less from the true king of the swamp. Ray shouts a warning: "Don't look it in the eyes, or your mana will freeze in just 3 seconds." Asta is genuinely annoyed that Ray waited until this crucial stage of the fight to mention that. It turns out Ray has always lived in fear of the king of the swamp, because it can disrupt mana and freeze an opponent's magic. Even worse, its hide is thick enough to shrug off the ether of a top-tier knight. That's exactly why Ray's master told him back then that the best move against this beast was to never engage it at all. Instead of planning an escape, Ray now believes Asta actually has a chance to win, and he clenches his fist while choosing to believe in this power. Asta promises they are going to have a very long talk later, and Ray can only agree. Since he can't look at its eyes for more than 3 seconds, Asta decides to take them out of the equation. He lunges, tagging the monster's eyes with rubies and leaving it screaming in absolute blind agony. The beast thrashes in pain, and as its eyes flutter open, it spots Asta lunging back in for more. Asta lands a heavy punch, unleashing a collision strike that sends shockwaves through the beast, though it somehow tanks the hit. Asta admits the thing is actually pretty strong, but it's way too slow to keep up. It's time to end this right now. Asta admits the beast kept him entertained, so he is going to show it something really interesting by pulling in massive mana for a new skill he calls Explosive Annihilation. The monster takes the hit and looks fine until it starts swelling from the inside and pops like a balloon. With the beast dead, Asta hits the water, completely unconscious from the sheer exhaustion. And that's where we leave. Asta annoyed that a mere monster pushed him to his absolute limit. Alright, you and I are about to see just how lethal Asta has become. He wonders if this skill would have crushed Declan back then. Even with a sturdy force field, that vicious blast would have ripped him apart. Nobody walks away from that kind of raw power. Asta calls it Explosive Annihilation for a reason. It literally erases everything in its path, leaving absolutely nothing behind. Little did he know, someone was lurking in the shadows, watching his every move. It is Kellogg. He is shocked that Asta actually took down the ancient beast he used as bait. Seeing Asta brawl with a monster and shred its eyes? That was not on his bingo card. He wonders if Asta is a mage, but the sheer amount of mana being used is just too insane. Asta does not fight like a martial artist either. Even a pro like Kellogg is genuinely impressed by this display. For the first time, Kellogg feels a cold shiver of fear. He laughs like a madman, totally thrilled by the hunt. Asta is a hunter, just like him. He wonders how he looks through the eyes of a fellow predator. Seeing how dangerous this place is, Asta realizes his preparations need to be perfect. Soon after, he wakes up and asks Oberyn for a time check. Oberyn is relieved, he is awake, and tells him he has been out cold for about 2 hours. Asta groans through a massive headache. Oberyn explains that this is just the nasty side effect of using overlock. He says not to worry since the duration was short, so the physical strain should be pretty minimal. Still, he warns Asta that he will be feeling like garbage for the rest of the day. On the inside, Asta feels like he is dying. His hands just will not stop trembling. He realizes he would have drowned in the swamp if Oberyn and Ray had not saved him. Suddenly, he notices Ray is gone and asks Oberyn where he is. Ray pops out of the bushes, telling Asta not to worry because he has zero intention of running away anymore. Asta tells him to zip it and just explain what he was doing out there. Ray confesses he was scavenging the Lord of the Swamp for anything that might be worth some gold. When Ray asks about the body, Asta tells him he can keep it as payment for his life. He even offers him a subspace pouch to haul it, making Ray one very happy scavenger. Asta gives him one of the pouches he looted from that black market dealer earlier. While Ray celebrates his big score, Oberyn asks Asta if he is sure, since those remains are worth a literal fortune. Asta claims he has no use for the corpse and that Ray just needs a way to survive. Oberyn is totally blown away, concluding that Asta is a noble man who is both considerate and kind. Stick with me here because Oberyn is completely wrong about Asta's actual motives for leaving that corpse behind. That hide is famous for blocking ether, meaning a robe made from it would sell for a massive price. But there is a catch. Sometimes these materials lose all their special properties the moment the monster dies. That is why Ray's blade cut through it so easily, even though he does not realize it yet. It is basically just a pile of junk. Oberyn asks for the plan, since they are already behind schedule. According to Ray, they can actually afford to rest for one more day. Asta is not interested in resting and wants to get moving as soon as possible. Later that night, they reach Base Camp 1 in total darkness. Ray explains they do not light fires at night because the glow attracts hungry monsters. He suggests they find the campkeeper immediately to get their sleeping quarters assigned. When Asta asks who that is, Ray explains it is the mercenary group that effectively runs this place. They take a cut of materials from every mercenary who decides to stay there. You and I know the truth. These guys are basically just glorified bandits. Suddenly, a scary voice cuts through the dark, mocking Ray for calling them bandits. Fixer stands on the watchtower, and Ray absolutely loses it. Even Oberyn is intimidated by this man's presence. It turns out his group is known as AWAKENS. Fixer leaps from his post and lands heavily right in front of the group. He reaches out to Asta, but Asta does not budge until Fixer claims he is just offering a handshake. Asta finally grips his hand, and the two immediately clash their auras as a silent show of force. Once the power struggle ends, Asta asks why he came out. Trust me, you need to hear this proposition. Alright, you and I are diving into a mess, as Oberyn demands to know how they heard about the move back to Base 4. Fixer immediately snitches on Rai, claiming he overheard him bragging about some scheme to rip off a clueless mage. But Fixer does not care about that. His real goal is forcing his way into their squad for the journey to Base 4. Asta is stunned, but Fixer keeps it real. If the fourth base falls, their camp is toast, so they have to join the fight. Asta considers it, knowing that more blades on their side is never a bad thing in this hellhole. He is about to agree until Oberyn cuts him off, killing the deal and leaving Asta in total shock. Fixer demands to know why he is refusing, but Oberyn warns him that the land around Base 4 is now a literal death zone. Apparently, things have gotten way worse than anyone could have ever imagined. Fixer gets aggressive, asking Oberyn if he is seriously suggesting they just hide away because things got a little dangerous. Oberyn confirms it. Now watch this. Fixer snaps, unleashing a crushing aura and calling the mage arrogant. Furious, Fixer asks who gave a mage the right to decide his fate when he has survived this long with nothing but his own sword. He might look like a simple mercenary, but he and his men have lives to protect and lines they refuse to cross for anyone. Right then, Oberyn is clearly feeling the pressure as Fixer screams that they have just as much right to defend their home as he does. Fixer turns away, telling Oberyn he expected more from the headmaster's top disciple, but now he is just a massive disappointment. He tells Oberyn to just go to bed while he and his crew go find a place to rest their heads. The vibe is beyond awkward now, so Asta decides to clear his head and hits the showers. Once he is clean and the rest of the team is asleep, Asta makes a late-night visit to Fixer's office. Fixer asks what he is doing there, but Asta plays it cool, saying he just wants to have a quick chat. Fixer mocks him, calling him a gutsy kid for showing up. But when Asta asks his age, Fixer claims he is turning 50 soon. Seriously? 50? That sounds like a stretch for a guy in this world. Asta hits him with a curveball, claiming he actually turned 50 just last year. Fixer is not buying it, and tells Asta to get lost if he only came there to talk trash. Asta just smirks, knowing for a fact that Fixer is going to Base 4 whether anyone likes it or not. Since he is clearly stubborn, Asta suggests they team up and ignore Oberyn's warnings entirely. Asta knows that moving together is their only real shot at survival, regardless of what the mage thinks. You and I can see Fixer's shock. He totally thought Oberyn was the one calling all the shots here. Asta reveals that Oberyn is just a face for the team, and that he is nothing like that scared mage. He claims he actually acts his age. It turns out Asta wants Fixer along because of that massive aura he flared earlier. He saw the experience in Fixer's eyes, and finding a knight with that kind of raw power is nearly impossible. Fixer realizes Asta just wants his squad as meat shields, and Asta does not even try to deny it. Fixer asks if this is a formal job, but Asta reminds him he is just offering exactly what Fixer needs: a way out. Fixer decides to send the rookies home, choosing to take only the battle-hardened veterans with him into the fire. Asta admits it is pretty noble of him to sacrifice himself just so the kids can live another day. Fixer tells Asta he needs Rai to lead the kids out safely, because he is the best scout around. He is even willing to trade their own expert guide just to make it happen. Asta asks him why he is even stressing over this small detail. Fixer warns him about the terrifying swamp ruler. Apparently, their current guide is not good enough to find a way around that beast. Asta tells him he has absolutely nothing to worry about there, which leaves Fixer looking completely lost and confused. Asta asks how he thinks they reached Base 1. If they had circled the swamp, they would have ended up at Base 3 instead. Fixer is totally stunned, asking if the swamp ruler simply retreated, but Asta casually mentions he sent the monster straight to the afterlife. This news absolutely shocks Fixer to his bones. Come the morning, the mercs prepare to move out while the rookies head for home. Asta asks if he sent a scout to double-check his story. The scout confirms the beast is dead, and now Fixer is forced to ask Asta, who the hell are you really? Asta gives a cold look, reminding him that he is the employer now, and asks if he is finally ready to move. Fixer agrees, telling Asta to keep his word and get the kids out safely. Asta promises it is as good as done. Fixer asks what Asta wants in return, and Asta repeats himself, he just needs men who can act as cannon fodder. Asta tells him that once the job is finished, he is free to do whatever he wants. Fixer just nods. Asta tells him to drop the formalities since age means nothing here, and trust me, you and I are going to love what happens next. Alright, you and I are watching Fixer have a total meltdown, convinced that Asta isn't just 2 years older, but maybe an ancient mage who chugged a rejuvenation potion to look young again. One of the crew members suddenly arrives to report that their preparations are finally finished. Fixer snaps into gear, ordering everyone to move out because they can't leave their high-paying employer, Asta, waiting for long. He splits the team, sending the veterans deep into the woods while the younger recruits are stationed on the outer perimeter. Fixer fires them up, yelling for them to uphold the legendary Aviat name. The mercenaries are chomping at the bit to volunteer, but seeing their chaotic energy, Fixer just tells them to shut their mouths. He tells the rookies he doesn't want to hear a peep from them and bluntly orders them to get a move on. Despite Fixer's rough commands, the group hesitates, and Asta is just silently observing the whole drama from behind. Rai approaches and asks if the Aviat mercenaries are really tagging along, which Asta confirms with a simple nod. He asks Rai if he is deaf, while Rai admits this is huge since these legendary monster hunters have held the line for nearly 200 years. Hearing that, Asta realizes these guys aren't just muscle, they actually know how to win. Now pay attention here, Rai is confident he can handle most monsters, but even he knows having these mercenaries as backup is a massive advantage. Asta hopes that's true, then turns to check if Rai and Oberon have already finished packing their gear. Ober claims he is ready to go, but Asta can't help but tease him, saying a dead man won't need supplies. Rai tells Asta to stop jinxing them, but then begs Asta to take him under his wing if they survive. Asta realizes the guy is making a massive gamble with his life, but honestly, unless he wants to get slaughtered by Declan, Asta is his only real lifeline. So, Asta just tells Rai he is free to do whatever he wants. Rai is incredibly grateful and promises to give his all, though he jokes that selling his soul is off limits. Asta later regroups with Fixer, who asks if he can help talk some sense into someone before they depart. When Asta asks for a location, Fixer explains that this person is currently stationed over at the second base camp. He wants Asta to visit the second base camp to convince the local chief, Halaga, to join their cause. Fixer explains that even if Halag stays, they desperately need his vice chief, who is known for being a genius tactical mastermind. Meanwhile, over at the second base camp, the soldiers there are already packed and preparing to move to base camp 4. The vice chief mentions they just need to clear the facilities, but Halagu tells him not to bother, since they can just reclaim the place from goblins later on. Deep down, the vice chief is sweating, knowing they can only reclaim it if they actually make it back alive. Halag starts getting deep, talking about how empty everything feels now that he has finally reached the top as the chief. He even tells his vice that he hopes to die soon so the younger man can take over and understand his pain. His vice snaps back, telling him to quit making those twisted, morbid jokes like they mean nothing. Okay, I know what you're thinking, this guy is acting weird. And Halagu basically confirms it, saying he is acting out because his time is almost up. The vice chief is stunned, finally realizing that Halag actually plans on heading into the fray with Fixer and his crew. He screams at Halag that the destroyer is no ordinary beast, it is already warping the entire forest even before its mutation is fully complete. He asks why a guy like him is suddenly throwing his life away when he was never the heroic type. Halag asks what kind of man he thinks he is, and the vice replies that he is just someone chasing a payday. Halagay points out that every elite warrior will be there, making this a battle that is actually worth fighting. The vice chief still isn't buying it and desperately tries to get him to reconsider this suicide mission. He warns Halig that the men are already terrified and ready to bolt, so they really shouldn't be heading to Base Camp 4. Halig just smiles, noting that his vice chief is clearly terrified of meeting his end. The man admits it freely, saying he has zero interest in seeing his ancestors anytime soon. Halig then drops a bombshell, telling him to take the chief's seat right now so he can experience it once. He tells him he is free to run the camp however he wants. The dude just stands there, completely paralyzed, as Haligo officially declares him the new chief of the second base camp. He even tells him he can change the name of the camp to whatever. This farewell was supposed to be moving, but things turn horrific when a massive arm suddenly pierces Halig's chest. It's Kellogg, laughing like a maniac while telling Halig that he is sending him and his entire unit straight to the afterlife. As the vice chief screams in terror, Halig reacts. You and I just saw a legend fall. Halig uses his last strength to kick his friend far away. Stick with me, the new chief just watched Kellogg brutally end his boss's life. Halig's final words are a command to survive and lead as the brand new chief. Well guys, that's the end, but you and I definitely want more. If you like this video, drop next part in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you and I can catch the next one.